An infant was born. This infant's eyes were closed tightly as it sat cross-legged in midair, and its skin was white and tender, causing it to seem pure and flawless. Strands of the aura of the Tao coiled around its body and emanated a blazing sheen. The instant that Xianxia's gaze swept over, the infant suddenly opened its eyes, and their gazes collided in midair before a strange and indescribable connection was instantly formed between them. The step of strengthening the true essence and molding the soul was successful. Xianxia took a deep breath and swiftly executed the visualization technique with both his soul cores at the first possible moment. Within Xianxia's sea of consciousness, his soul core that was much smaller sat cross-legged, while the enormous Fuxi divine status rumbled into appearance in the sky, and it was 30 kilometers tall and emitted an ancient and vast aura. It seemed to be suppressing the times, transcended the 6 paths of reincarnation, and it stood towering above the grand Tao, eternally free. His soul core bathed beneath the warm divine light emanated by the Fuxi divine status, and it started to stabilize and recover at a speed visible to the eye. On the other hand, within the body of that infant, a soul core was visualizing the Fuxi divine status as well, and it emitted boundless radiance. Both the soul cores that had been split apart were respectively comprehending the Fuxi divine statue while growing and recovering swiftly, and the swiftly improving strength of these soul cores were growing larger and larger like a rolling ball of snow. This process continued for an entire month. When Xianxia opened his eyes once more, he saw that the infant had transformed into a young man that wore an apricot yellow Taoist robe, had shoulder-length hair, handsome features, a tall figure, brows that were pitch black like ink and shaped like swords, and his entire body was suffused with strands of the aura of the Tao, causing him to seem extraordinary. Shockingly, he was another Xianxia, is finally complete. The soul core of my main body has roughly recovered by around 70%, and it requires another period of time to recover completely. Xianxia took a deep breath before falling into meditation once again. Oh, the congenital realm. Xianxia, who wore the apricot yellow Taoist robe, stood up instead, and then he gazed at his main body before a strange feeling of familiarity surged out into his heart. The main body and clone could be said to possess similar memories, and they could share cultivation experiences and comprehension in Tao insight. But they were independent individuals in other aspects, and it was like a second life. The only difference was that the clone couldn't share the cultivation and strength of the main body. This was different from the external avatar that body refiners at the nether transformation realm possessed. The external avatar didn't possess a soul core but possessed the strength and combat strength of the main body. It was purely condensed from shaman energy and was controlled by the main body to do battle. On the other hand, the worldmend technique Xianxia cultivated relied on splitting the soul core into 2 to forcefully construct a second life. Worldmend, it took from the excess to make up for the deficiency. This cultivation technique Axiu passed down to him was absolutely a top-rate treasure in the world, and it an extremely rare existence that was almost like stealing a life from the heavens. Xianxia even suspected that if this cultivation technique were to be exposed, he would surely suffer the wrath of the heavens. After all, it was simply no different from robbing nature and reversing life and death. Similarly, this cultivation technique was different from the so-called action of stealing the body of another to achieve rebirth. Because the bodies of chi refiners were destroyed, they utilized the soul core to seize the body of another. But there was a huge problem with this, and that was the compatibility of the soul core and body was terrible. No matter how good the body was, the problem of conflict between the soul and body would occur after the body was seized, and the slightest mistake might cause one's body to explode and die from the conflict. Even if one was able to deal with the conflict between the soul and body, it required spending an extremely long period of time to break in. So unless there was no other choice, there wasn't any cultivator at the nether transformation realm that would choose to seize the body of another to achieve rebirth. On the other hand, the worldmend technique was different. It utilized one's own blood essence to construct an embryo before utilizing one's own soul core to construct the soul, and then it condensed a clone from this. So the problem of conflict between soul and body utterly didn't exist. Very good. The physique of this clone is pure, and it's coiled with the aura of the Tao. It's simply on par with the various innate divine bodies. coupled with my experience in cultivating and Tao comprehension, and the supplement of various spirit medicines, it would surely be able to charge into the nether transformation realm within a short period of time. A wisp of a smile couldn't help but suffuse the corners of his mouth as the apricot yellow-robed Chun she sensed the condition of this clone, and he didn't hesitate any longer to withdraw a blood crystal. This blood crystal was refined from the corpse of the lightning spirit on the 60th level of the sword cave, and he'd refined over 10 of them. They were fist-sized with blood chi that seethed like lava, and they carried an unbelievable miraculous effect towards body refiners. After all, the lightning spirit was an existence equivalent to a 5th-level earthly immortal realm expert, so how enormous would its blood chi be? Bang! Chun she circulated the universe stars layer body forging technique and caused a large amount of essence to be ceaselessly absorbed from the blood crystal and transform into shaman energy that rumbled within his flesh, and it circulated endlessly like a surging torrent. 5th Earth Shaman Marking, 2nd Wood Shaman Marking, 7th Gold Shaman Marking, 3rd Fire Shaman Marking. In merely the time for a few breaths, 9 shaman markings had fully appeared on his back. He directly broke through to the perfection stage of the Violet Palace realm in body refinement in one go. If this sort of crushing cultivation speed of breaking through repeatedly from the congenital realm to the perfection stage of the Violet Palace realm was placed in the outside world, it would absolutely be able to terrify anyone. But it was very normal when Chun she thought about it. Presently, this clone of his was like a reincarnated immortal that had awakened his memories. His Tao comprehension, Tao heart cultivation, cultivation experience, and so on and so forth had attained an unprecedented height, and coupled with the large amounts of blood chi essence condensed within the blood crystals from the lightning spirit, cultivating to the perfection stage of the Violet Palace realm in body refinement in one go wasn't strange. Rumble. An hour later, Chun Shi's clone broke through once again and advanced into the perfection stage of the Golden Hall realm from the Violet Palace realm. At this moment, he was even charging towards the Golden Core realm. On the other hand, the 9 shaman markings on his back had condensed into a nebula that surged endlessly, and numerous grand Tao profundities had interwoven together there and were seething and developing. 1 month later, West Radiance Peak. Swoosh! Space fluctuated as a tall figure walked out from within, and it was precisely the enforcement elder, Lai Peng. He swept the surroundings with his gaze before gesturing to call Huamoliai over. Has Chun she not come out from his closed-door cultivation yet? Huamoliai shook his head. Martial uncle, little junior brother is still in closed-door cultivation. Oh! Lai Peng pondered briefly before he said, Never mind. Tell Chun Shi to go look for me at my abode when he comes out from closed-door cultivation. Lai Peng's voice hadn't finished resounding in the air when a voice suddenly sounded out from the bank of the distant sword purification pool. Martial Uncle Lai Peng, may I know why you've personally come to see me? Along with this voice was a tall figure that flashed through the sky and arrived here instantaneously. Surprisingly, it was Chun Shi. At this moment, he still wore green clothes. His long hair fluttered in the wind while his figure was lofty like a sword, and he carried an extraordinary bearing. But Lai Peng faintly sensed that Chun Shi seemed to have changed quite a bit. He frowned and said, Chun Shi, your soul core seems to have weakened slightly. Did you injure yourself while cultivating? You must remember that great haste does not always bring success. Presently, you're walking far ahead of your peers, so there's no need to force yourself like this. His voice unconsciously carried a wisp of concern. Chun Shi was stunned, and then he nodded. Thank you, Martial Uncle, for your concern. I'll bear it in mind. As long as you understand. Lai Peng smiled and said, I came here this time because of the 2 assignments of the passing of the flame and the enforcement of justice on behalf of the heavens. As he spoke, a jade slip appeared with a flip of his hand. Within this jade slip are some outstanding children with rather great reputation that our 9 Radiant Sword sect has noticed all over the Dark Reverie. Even though they're young, they've already revealed shocking natural talent. If you're going to take a disciple, then you can search for one from here before heading over personally. Chun Shi received it and sized it up briefly before noticing that the names of numerous outstanding children were listed on it, and it included their places of birth, origins, where they stayed, and various other detailed information. Xianxia couldn't help but be surprised in his heart because these outstanding children were distributed all over the dark reverie. Some were the distinguished children of marquis or generals, some were very ordinary youths from the countryside, some were pure-blooded creatures from the myriad of clans from the primordial era, and there were also some descendants of creatures that lives in seclusion deep within the ocean, so it could be said to cover and contain everything. Merely from this jade slip, it wasn't difficult to discern how deep the resources and reserves of the 9 Radiance sect were, and an ordinary sect was utterly incapable of gathering such detailed information. On the other hand, this jade slip lists the place some villains come and go from. There are demons with monstrous crimes and evil cultivators that cause harm to the world. Take it. You only have to slaughter 10 of these villains, and you'll be considered to have completed the assignment of enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens. Elder Lai Peng took out another jade slip and passed it to Xianxia. Villain rankings? Xianxia noticed to his shock that within this jade slip was actually a bounty ranking that was jointly released by the 10 great immortal sects, and it was densely filled with a string of blood-red names. Accompanying these names was the illusory image of the appearances of these villains beside it, the area they usually came and went at, and the monstrous crimes that they'd committed. Moreover, the villains ranked in the top 50 of this ranking were ferocious existences at the earthly immortal realm, and there were evil cultivators and demons with surging demonic chi. As for those below the top 50, they were villains at the nether transformation realm and below. Presently, the 3 dimensions are about to undergo an upheaval and the outside world is filled with danger. The figures of xenorace experts are present everywhere, so you must be careful when you leave the sect this time. As Elder Lai Peng spoke, he withdrew a jade talisman that flowed with a violet light from his sleeve, and he passed it to Xianxia. This is the cosmic immortal talisman that the sect master asked me to pass to you. Use it to save your life. Cosmic immortal talisman. Xianxia's eyes lit up as this was a supreme life-saving treasure. All those years ago, Xianxia had relied on this treasure to escape from his hands. So how could he possibly not know how precious this treasure was? Moreover, according to rumor, only a great figure of the immortal dimension was capable of refining such an immortal talisman. So long as it was crushed, it was capable of passing through the boundless space and attain the effect of teleportation. It was the best tool to protect one's life because practically no one in the mortal world was capable of stopping it. Thank you, Martial Uncle Lai Peng. Xianxia cupped his hands. He never expected that he would be able to obtain such a treasure just by going out to carry out 2 assignments, and he was extremely excited in his heart. Haha! It's sufficient so long as you return safely. Prepare yourself and leave 3 days from now. Lai Peng roared with laughter and instructed him slightly before leaving swiftly. 3 days of time? Xianxia's fingers rubbed the cosmic immortal talisman as he pondered for a moment, and then he didn't think any further before turning around and returning to the West Radiance Peak. He had to seize the opportunity of these 3 days of time to prepare himself properly. Hey, Xianxia, come over here. I have an urgent matter that I need to discuss with you. Suddenly, Xianxia came out of nowhere. She waved her hand while calling out in a clear voice, and she revealed a rare serious expression. Xianxia speaking to him with such a serious expression was absolutely an unprecedented first. At least, Xianxia had never seen her like this. At the bank of the sword purification pool within the courtyard, Xianxia knit her beautiful brows together as she said, "Have you really cultivated the world mend technique successfully?" Xianxia was stunned, and then he nodded and said, "What about it?" Xianxia said, "Let me see." Swoosh! An expanse of ripples appeared in space as Xianxia in an apricot yellow Taoist robe walked out from within the ripples to stand shoulder to shoulder with Xianxia. Besides the difference in the color of their clothes, they were exactly similar in all other aspects like twins. Actually, their soul cores and memories were the same, so they were like a right hand and the left. They stood shoulder to shoulder and had completely similar thoughts, and this sort of feeling was strange and difficult to describe. Xianxia looked at Xianxia, and then looked at his clone before she asked, "How does it feel?" "Very good." The apricot yellow Taoist robe Xianxia said, "Because I have the assistance of my experiences in cultivating and comprehension, My clone has already broken through to the rebirth realm. A month in the outside world was almost a year in the world of stars, and coupled with the assistance of the blood crystals from the lightning spirit, it was impossible for the body refinement cultivation of this clone of his to not improve repeatedly. Axiu seemed to be stunned and couldn't help but stretch out her snow-white little hand with the intention of pinching the face of the apricot-yellow Taoist robe Chun, she to confirm that this fellow was real. But she didn't succeed before being stopped by Chan Shi, and he said angrily, "What are you doing?" Axiu frowned, and then tilted her head as she muttered in a low voice, "Fortunately, this fellow succeeded in cultivating it. Otherwise, if an accident were to have happened, I would surely be embarrassed to death." "Chan," she said with astonishment. "What did you say?" A wisp of a bad premonition suddenly gushed out into his heart. What does she mean by "fortunately succeeded in cultivating it"? What does she mean by "if an accident were to happen"? Could it be that she wasn't sure if this world men technique could be cultivated successfully before she handed it to me? Chun Shi's face darkened when he thought up to hear. Axiu spoke hurriedly in a clear voice. "Hey, don't misunderstand me. I never cultivated this world men technique in the past, so I naturally didn't dare be sure that you'll be able to cultivate it successfully. But I can guarantee that this cultivation technique is absolutely genuine." The more she explained, the more Chan Shi felt she couldn't be trusted, and he asked with a gloomy expression, "Tell me the truth. Where did you get this world men technique?" Axiu said with a serious expression, "I took it from my home. What's wrong with that?" Chun Shi felt his headache every time he saw Axiu like this, and he didn't know if this young woman was really so candid or was she feigning ignorance because her reply was so serious yet so irrelevant. "Then where is your home?" Chun Shi asked angrily. "Why? Are you going to drag me back home?" Axiu instantly became vigilant like a terrified kitten, and she stared vigilantly at Chun Shi. Chun Shi held his forehead and was completely speechless. "Your strength is so terrifying, so who would possibly be capable of dragging you back home?" But through these words, he was able to faintly find out that this mysterious green-dressed young woman before him had probably snuck out from home. "All right, I'll be leaving first." Axiu patted her hands and grinned as she looked at Chun Shi before turning and leaving. "You're leaving just like that? Didn't you say you have an urgent matter to discuss with me?" said Chun Shi with surprise. "I've already asked what I wanted to ask, and there's nothing else." Axiu didn't even turn around as she said swiftly, "Besides that, be more careful when you go out. But even then, you've already cultivated the world men technique successfully. So even if your main body dies, it's fine so long as your clone survives." Chan Shi was stunned, and he kept having the feeling that Axiu's final words were pointing to something. He pondered for a long time before putting his clone away, and then he went to look for Meng Wei and Emoya. He told them to be at ease and cultivate in the West Radiance Peak, and he would be leaving to carry out an assignment 3 days from now and would return very quickly, so there was no need to worry. After that, he went to look for Huomoliai and the others, and he told them that in the event Mu Kuei and Ling Bai should return, they should ask Mu Kuei and Ling Bai to wait in the West Radiance Peak until he returns from carrying out the assignment. 3 days later, Chun Shi transformed into a ray of light that left the sect. Swoosh! Under the clear blue sky, a treasured vessel crushed the waves of air in the sky as it moved through the clouds. Chun Shi laid carefree on the stern of the ship and was reading through a jade slip. Mottled sunlight that was like gold dust sprayed onto his body while a refreshing breeze blew gently, and it caused his dense long hair to flutter about. River Center Kingdom, Stone Beam City. Xiahou Qing, the eldest son of the distinguished Cultivation clan, the Xiahou clan, innately born with an extraordinary physique, 14 years old, intelligent, acute, and possesses the reputation as Stone Beam's Golden Dragon. Willow Kingdom, the Prime Minister's daughter, Hua Shuiying, 16 years old, possesses the extraordinary natural talent of the proud frost jade body. Phoenix Glow Ridge, Yellow Polonia Town, the son of the huntsman Zhang Juzhen, 12 years old, possesses a resolute mentality and an extraordinary physique that carries the strength to tear apart a tiger. This jade slip listed no less than a few thousand names, and all of them were geniuses below the age of 16. They either possessed superb physiques or extraordinary natural talent, and it caused Xianxia to click his tongue with admiration and be unable to help but sigh with emotion. This word is so large that there's probably no lack of all sorts of geniuses. In the next moment, Xianxia seemed to have noticed something, and he was slightly stunned. A little bit below the center of the list was the words, "At the side of the Sky Dao Abandoned Mountain, Marquis Wen's Estates Junior Marquis, Wenhua. 14 years old, born with the Gold Star body, possesses a resolute disposition, matured intelligence, and so on and so forth." Xianxia didn't care about the Gold Star body. Even though a person that possessed such a physique was innately capable of grasping the grand Tao of metal and was extremely rare, to Xianxia, who'd seen countless peerless and monstrous geniuses, such natural endowment was nothing to him. He really cared about the words, "Sky Dao Abandoned Mountain." These words drew out a string of past events that had been hidden in his mind for a long time, and it caused him to feel a sense of familiarity. He put down the jade slip and took out the dark reverie manual to read it carefully. In next to no time, Xianxia's eyes lit up. It really is like that. The Sky Dao Abandoned Mountain was where the extraordinary sect, the Sky Dao Palace, used to reside at. Unfortunately, around 10,000 years ago, the Sky Dao Palace was obliterated overnight. Its Dao inheritance vanished while it seemed to have evaporated into thin air. After all, the Sky Dao Palace was ranked amongst the 10 great immortal sects all those years ago, and its Dao inheritance could even be traced back to the primeval times, yet it had actually completely vanished into thin air overnight, causing the entire dark reverie to fall into extraordinary shock. At that time, all the powers in the world had sent people to go investigate, but they came back empty-handed in the end. It was even to the extent that the inheritance and treasure vault of the sect had vanished. This matter had become a mystery that was impossible to solve for a few thousands of years. Even now, it drew many cultivators to head to the Sky Dao Abandoned Mountain to search for its treasures. It was precisely because of the obliteration of the Sky Dao Palace that another extraordinary power, the Truth Embrace sect, had leaped up to become a new member of the 10 great immortal sections. This wasn't the key point. The key point was that Xianxia possessed the key to the treasure vault that was closely linked to the Sky Dao Palace, the Sky Key. When he thought up to here, Xianxia stretched out his hand, causing a 3 centimeters long clear colored key to appear in his palm. It was like the color of the clear sky with a surface covered in numerous mysterious talisman markings, and it emanated a green-colored glow that were like specks of starlight that were extremely resplendent. This was the Sky Key, the most precious treasure he obtained from Qian Yuan's treasure vault in the depths of the oceanic desert within the Darchu dynasty. This treasure is called the Sky Key. It's the only way to open the secret vault of my Sky Dao Palace, and within it is the inheritance treasures of my Sky Dao Palace for over 100,000 years, such as Taoist books, magic treasures, medicinal pills, and puppets, and it lacks nothing. I hope that after you obtain the treasures within this secret vault, you can recruit disciples, pass on the Dao and mantle of my Sky Dao Palace, and rebuild my supreme Sky Dao Palace. In this way, I can smile in the 9 heavens, Sai. These words were left behind by the owner of the treasure vault after Xianxia obtained the Sky Key, and he still remembered it clearly in his mind. At that time, Ling Bai had even said that merely the sect guarding grand formation of the Sky Dao Palace was a terrifying grand formation formed from over 10,000 top-grade heaven rank swords and 9 immortal swords. Even a heavenly immortal realm expert would be unable to escape with his life. It was obvious how terrifying that resources and strength of the Sky Dao Palace was from this Sky Dao Abandoned Mountain. I'll head there. Xianxia put the Sky Key away before deciding his destination immediately. If nothing unexpected happened, then the junior Marquis of Marquis Wen's estate, Wenhua, who lived at the side of the Sky Dao Abandoned Mountain, would naturally become Xianxia's objective to take as a disciple. Swoosh! The treasure vessel sped up, and it crushed the layer of clouds as it turned around in the next moment, and it flew towards the extreme distance. He has finally made an appearance. He made me wait bitterly for 5 years. He's truly detestable. Right when Xianxia had just left, space shook as a few figures appeared. The person in the lead was a young woman that was beautiful like a painting and had jet black hair that flowed down like a waterfall. She wore a crown that was like a shooting star, feathered clothes with tassels. Her bearing was reserved and tranquil, yet the space between her brows were filled with a noble aura of insufferable arrogance that allowed no disobedience. It was Bailey Yen from the Eternal Spirit Mountain. Since she lost repeatedly to Xianxia 5 years ago, Bailey Yen had never left for the sake of finding an opportunity to find out exactly how Xianxia had comprehended the Eternal Grand Tao. All her companions had left during these years, and only she and those 2 old servants had waited until now. Of course, it wasn't that her patience was sufficiently strong, and it was because she was worried she would be unable to give the seniors of the sect an explanation if she returned to the sect just like this. This was the most fundamental reason. I heard a long time ago that this fellow has already been promoted to an elder of the 9 Radiant Sword sect, and he'll be going out to complete the assignments of passing down the flame and enforcing justice for the heavens soon. Now, we've finally waited until the moment he left the sect. Otherwise, if he stays within the 9 Radiant Sword sect for his entire lifetime, then I would really be helpless against him. Bailey Yen gritted her teeth while the resentment and rage suppressed for a long time in her heart was on the verge of erupting. Let's go. We'll use the Void Shuttle and follow behind him, and then we'll find an opportunity to capture him. As she spoke, Bailey Yen gestured with her white hand, causing a brilliant silver-colored and shuttle-shaped magic treasure to soar into the sky, and it emanated a myriad of rays of silver brilliance that enveloped her and the 2 old servants before instantly vanishing within space. Xianxia. Oh, Xianxia. I finally waited until the moment you left the sect. I'll surely kill you this time. At the peak of a precipitous mountain that towered into the skies within the Heavenflow Dao sect, Bing Shirtian put down the jade slip in his hand before a wisp of fierce and merciless killing intent suffused his starry eyes. The Sky Dao Abandoned Mountain was situated at the southeast area of Golden Supremacy Kingdom, and it was a luxuriant and towering mountain that continued for a few tens of thousands of kilometers. Compared to the Darchu dynasty, this Golden Supremacy Kingdom was undoubtedly much larger. It covered a vast territory and possessed abundant resources, and it was a rich land that fostered outstanding talents. The forces of cultivators within the kingdom was rather formidable, and they were distributed into over 20 first-rate powers that were of varying sizes, causing it to be flourishing and prosperous. Corona City neighbored the Sky Dao Abandoned Mountain, and it was the most flourishing enormous city in the southeast area of Golden Supremacy Kingdom. Marquis Wen's estate was situated here, and the Marquis Wen Tianxua was a renowned earthly immortal realm expert. Recently, along with the imminent arrival of the junior Marquis Wen Hua's 14th birthday, Corona City was bustling to the extreme, and cultivators were frequently arriving in the city. To the members of the Golden Supremacy Kingdom, the age of 14 meant adulthood. The junior Marquis Wen Hua, who was about to become 14, was born with the Gold Star body, and he was a genius young man that was renowned throughout the city. So his ceremony of adulthood would naturally be exceedingly grand and received the attention of many powers. Most importantly, the Marquis Wen Tianxua had already decided that once the 14th birthday of the junior Marquis passed, he would select a power for the junior Marquis to join, and he would stop restraining or supervising him. So there was no lack of experts from various powers that has come over after hearing the news, and they hoped to take the junior Marquis Wen Hua as their disciple. After all, if a sect wanted to expand and strengthen itself, then it could never do without the entrance of fresh blood. On the other hand, the junior Marquis was born with the Gold Star body, and he was intelligent, resolute, and mature. A genius young man like this was absolutely a good seedling that was 1 in a million, and there was no power that wouldn't be moved. Of course, sects that possessed the confidence and qualifications to take Wen Hua as a disciple were first-rate powers or above, because ordinary powers were utterly unable to receive the acknowledgement of the Marquis Wen Tianxua. After all, Wen Tianxua was an earthly immortal realm expert, so how could he possibly take a fancy to an ordinary power? That's the Sky Dao Abandoned Mountain. Swoosh! A treasure vessel flashed through the sky and stopped within the clouds. She stood upright at the stem while looking at the lofty mountain that rose and fell continuously in the distance, and he couldn't help but sigh with emotion in his heart. This Sky Dao Abandoned Mountain has a beautiful landscape with rivers close to the mountain, and it converges the spirit energy of the heavens and the earth. It's absolutely a rare place of good fortune. If it wasn't for the Sky Dao Palace being annihilated overnight, the vicinity of this mountain would probably be even more prosperous, and it would absolutely be a supreme paradise of cultivation in the hearts of all cultivators. Xianxia stared at it for a short moment before his gaze swept downwards, causing a magnificent and enormous city to be reflected within his eyes. The junior Marquis Wenhua? Let me see exactly what sort of young genius he is. I hope he doesn't disappoint me. Xianxia put the treasured vessel away amidst his mutters, and then he drifted down to the ground before walking towards the city. As soon as he entered the city, a wave of clamorous noise assaulted his face, and everywhere that met the eye were stores, restaurants, tea houses, medicine stores, medicinal pill stores, precious treasure pavilions, and so on and so forth. All of them were exquisite, richly ornamented, and had endless streams of people moving up and down. It was countless times more flourishing and prosperous than Silken City. Have you heard? Not only will the various powers of Golden Supremacy Kingdom be sending experts during the 14th birthday of the Junior Marquis, even some renowned sects will be arriving. Haha! What's so strange about that? Our Junior Marquis was born with the Gold Star body, an outstanding talent that's 1 in a million. Such natural talent can be considered astounding and extraordinary even in the 10 great immortal sections. I wonder which sect the Junior Marquis will choose. Unfortunately, if it was in the past, the Sky Dao Palace would be right beside our Corona City, so there would be utterly no need to choose and he could directly join the Sky Dao Palace. Don't talk nonsense. How many years ago was that? If the Sky Dao Palace was really so formidable, then it would be impossible for it to have been annihilated overnight. The streets were filled with discussions about the Junior Marquis, Wenhua's 14th birthday. Obviously, everyone in Corona City was paying most attention to this. Xianxia placed his hands behind his back as he walked in through the bustling streets, and he heard a great deal of similar discussions all along the way, causing him to be unable to refrain from frowning. The various powers have sent experts to recruit disciples? If it's like this, then it'll probably be slightly troublesome to take Wenhua as my disciple. After that, he shook his head. Even though he'd left the sect this time for the sake of completing those 2 tests of the sect, he didn't intend to act perfunctorily on the matter of taking a disciple. After all, so long as he succeeded, the person would be his own disciple, and taking a profligate disciple with a bad character was absolutely not something Xianxia wanted to see happen. Forget it. What I hear may be false, but what I see is true. I'll head over to Marquis Wen's estate first and see exactly what sort of nature Wenhua has. If he's unable to obtain my acknowledgement, then worse comes to worse, I can just walk away. Xianxia pondered briefly before heading directly towards Marquis Wen's estate. Marquis Wen's estate. Group after group of guards were standing before the grand entrance to the estate, and all of them were actually Rebirth Realm cultivators. Moreover, all of them were emanating strength, and they were top figures amongst their peers, especially the old man that led the groups. He was a Nether Transformation Realm cultivator, and he had a cold expression as he stood proudly before the entrance with a bearing that was heavy like a mountain, causing others to not dare cause trouble upon catching sight of him. At this moment, people were moving about and going in and out of the entrance. All these people had come to congratulate the Junior Marquis on his 14th birthday, and it caused the estate to seem extremely bustling. May I ask, fellow Taoist, why you've come to Marquis Wen's estate? Xianxia was stopped by a guard when he wanted to step into the estate. Couldn't be helped, he was truly too young in appearance. Moreover, he was all alone and had an extremely unfamiliar face, so it was impossible for him to not draw attention. To take a disciple. Xianxia spoke calmly, and he didn't care about the guard's attitude. You take a disciple? The guard stared with eyes wide open and sized Xianxia up from head to toe once again with a doubtful expression. Xianxia started laughing. Can't I? All visitors are guests. Let him through. The old man in the lead suddenly waved his hand and spoke. The guard was stunned, and then he moved aside sulkily. Xianxia cupped his hands at the old man before walking in. Manager Wu, that kid's identity hasn't been examined. How could you let him leave? That guard was extremely puzzled, and he asked the old man. That young man is an expert, and his cultivation is at least at the Nether Transformation Realm. Such a figure might be a top figure from a great sect. The old man replied indifferently. It can't be, right? That guard was astonished. I've inspected countless people in my life, and I've never misjudged a person. On the other hand, you're still too young. The old man shook his head and smiled before falling silent. The guard puckered his lips with an indifferent expression. Right when Xianxia had just entered Marquis Wen's estate, a young woman and 2 old servants arrived successively. The young woman was Bailey Yen, but her current attire was much more simple and clean. She wore a violet-colored dress. Her jet-black hair hung loosely on her shoulder, and she revealed a gorgeous face. She was like a hibiscus that emerged out of clear water, a carving of nature, and she revealed natural beauty. Looks like this fellow intends to take Wenhua as his disciple. Bailey Yen pondered for a moment before suddenly moving towards Marquis Wen's estate as well. Even though her dressing was simple, it was impossible for it to conceal her innate beauty. The noble aura she'd fostered since a young age caused every single move of hers to carry an aura of insufferable arrogance that allowed no disobedience. Coupled with the 2 old servants with heavy bearings that followed behind her, even the old man that led the group was alarmed at the instant she appeared at the entrance of the estate. The outcome was that Bailey Yan's group directly entered the estate without any problems. Wonderful! Wonderful! Even I felt a trace of terror when facing those 2 old servants behind this young woman. They're probably at the earthly immortal realm. Who exactly are they? Could they be distinguished guests from the 10 great immortal sects? When Bailey Yen and the others left, the old man that led the group was still extremely shocked in his heart, and he seemed to be distracted. Manager Wu, you've inspected countless people in your life, so have you discerned their origins? That guard from before couldn't refrain from asking. You talk too much. Manager Wu grunted coldly, and then he couldn't help but sigh lightly. Distinguished guests. They're absolutely the most distinguished guests I've seen in all my life. Merely that bearing is absolutely not something an ordinary person can learn. The guard couldn't help but be astounded when he saw how seriously the old man spoke, and he said embarrassedly, Manager Wu, then why do you think they've come? Manager Wu frowned. He was pondering about this as well, but he couldn't think of a reasonable explanation. After all, in the entire Marquis Wen's estate, only the Marquis Wen Tianxua possessed a cultivation at the earthly immortal realm. But the 2 old servants of that young woman seemed to be on par with the Marquis. So if it was said that this group of people had come for the sake of taking the junior Marquis Wenhua as a disciple of their sect, then it seemed like they'd mobilized too many forces. Go report of this matter to the Marquis. Manager Wu pondered for a short moment before instructing right away. The guard revealed a serious expression and didn't dare dally before rushing off. The estate was extremely large and occupied a vast area. After Xianxia entered the estate, he walked along a trail and passed through an ancient forest before arriving in the depths of a garden, along with some other guests. Once he arrived here, the trees here had become sparse, and the ground was covered in a grass that seemed like a mattress. There was an extremely large and clear lake ahead, and it was like an enormous gem lay there. At this moment, numerous guests were gathered here. There were experts of the various powers that had graceful bearings, local renowned seniors, but it was mostly filled with young geniuses. They were aged from a little over 10 to over 20 years old, and every single one of them were extraordinary. Many of them seemed outstanding with a single glance, and some were even eminent geniuses with shocking auras. These are the most outstanding young disciples in Corona City, and they could be considered to have gained advantage from the birthday celebration of the junior Marquis and were able to gather here this time. Whether they will be chosen by an expert of the various powers and taken as a disciple will depend on their own ability. A middle-aged man laughed lightly and was chatting with his friend by his side. She came to a sudden understanding and sighed with emotion in his heart. This one Tianxua can be said to be a broad-minded person. The 14th birthday of his son caused the various powers to end experts over, and he used this opportunity to gather all the outstanding disciples in Corona City here. It's equivalent to giving them a fortuitous encounter, and if they're able to grab a hold of it, then they might be able to soar into the sky and become a dragon. Work hard. I, Chun Yen, can surely do it. Right when Xianxia was sizing up the surroundings, a voice that was weak to the point of being almost impossible to hear sounded out by his ears. Xianxia was slightly stunned and turned over to look. He saw a weak and dark-skinned young man in simple clothes by his side, and the young man had just clenched his fists tightly with a firm expression. When the young man noticed Xianxia's gaze, a wisp of embarrassment instantly suffused his face, and he seemed to be slightly shy and lowered his head. A very simple young man. This was Xianxia's first feeling when he saw Chen. This garden in Marquis Wen's estate was very large. It was covered in a carpet of grass and neighbored a clear lake, causing its scenery to be gorgeous. No matter how distinguished they were, all the guests that had come to participate in the 14th birthday banquet of the junior Marquis Wenhua were gathered here, and it could be said to be filled with distinguished experts. Moreover, all the outstanding young men and women from Corona City, and all the renowned and influential figures from all over were gathered in groups of 2 or 3. They were drinking wine and chatting at ease, causing it to seem rather bustling. When once looked carefully, one could notice that by the side of these neatly dressed, distinguished figures were beautiful attendants that were serving them carefully and were deeply afraid of not taking care of them well enough. On the other hand, there were only a few young men like Xianxia who had unfamiliar appearance and had come alone, and even if an attendant did come to attend to them, it would be in a neither warm nor cold attitude. Of course, Xianxia didn't care about all this, and he was interested in how this young man by his side, Chen, was able to enter the estate. This young man had dark skin, a firm expression, and wore simple clothes. Even though their clothes were washed clean, it wasn't difficult to discern that his clothes had been worn for many years. Merely based on this alone, it could be determined that his living circumstances weren't good. The banquet here had gathered renowned figures from Corona City itself and representatives from the various powers throughout the surroundings. All of them were dressed up like beautiful peacocks, and they were as gorgeous could be. So someone that wore simple clothes like Chen seemed to be extremely conspicuous instead. Most importantly, Xianxia noticed that the young man was intentionally hiding behind him, and the young man seemed to be deeply afraid of being dragged out by others. This caused him to be unable to help but be curious, and he couldn't refrain from asking, "You're called Chen?" The young man was stunned and seemed to have never expected that Xianxia would speak to him, and then he nodded repeatedly and hesitated for a long time before he said cautiously, "Young master, I'll just be staying here for a short while, all right?" Xianxia nodded and said, "Of course you can, but shouldn't you tell me the reason first?" Xianxia's voice was warm, and it caused others to unconsciously put down their guard. Xianxia's warm attitude caused Chen to be much more at ease, and he puckered his lips and went silent for a long time before he raised his head and gritted his teeth. I want to take someone as my master." As soon as these words were spoken, Chen seemed to feel much more relaxed, and his speech became much smoother. "Young master, to tell you the truth, I'm only a servant in this estate. I was gambled away into the estate at a young age and constantly suffer humiliation from other cruel servants. Yet no one upholds justice for me. Even though I felt angry, yet I've never blamed the heavens or others. I knew that if I didn't change myself, then even if I obtained the assistance of others, it would only be temporary in the end, and the only way to change my situation is to make myself stronger." When he spoke up to hear, the space between Chen brows were filled with a firm expression. "So, 3 years ago I started to learn to read in secret. Moreover, I observed others training and tempering themselves every single day for the sake of obtaining the favor of an expert one day and becoming that expert's disciple, so that I don't suffer the pain of enslavement any longer." Xianxia went silent. He was very sure that Chen wasn't lying because at Xianxia's level of cultivation, Xianxia was able to clearly sense Chen soul, and he was similarly able to judge if Chen had lied. It was precisely because of this that a wisp of admiration couldn't help but arise in Xianxia's heart after he finished hearing Chen account. Experiencing humiliation yet feeling no resentment, suffering a myriad of torment yet having the bravery to improve himself. When such a temperament was present in a young man at Chen's age, it was much more important and attention-catching than the so-called natural talent and natural endowment. To tell young master the truth, I'm actually rather perturbed in my heart when I came here this time because I've risked everything. If I'm noticed, then I'll surely suffer heavy punishment. After all, I'm still just a servant before I'm able to become strong. And the reason I'm hiding behind young master is for the sake of hiding myself and avoiding detection. Perhaps others can accept this opportunity with ease, but it means everything to me. It's too important. If I let it slip by just like this, then I presume I won't be able to encounter such an opportunity in my entire lifetime. Chun Yen spoke in self-ridicule, and then he fell into silence. He'd been sparing in speech all through these years, and he silently suppressed all the hardships he suffered in the depths of his heart. He hadn't opened up his heart and poured it all out in a long time. At this moment, even he felt it was unbelievable that he'd actually spoken about so many things that waited on his mind to a stranger. Right at this moment, a wave of clamorous noise suddenly sounded out from afar, and the crowd became restless. Whose daughter is she? How beautiful! This young master has wandered throughout the 38 cities and towns of Golden Supremacy Kingdom and am accustomed to seeing all sort of beauties, but I've never seen such a beautiful young woman. Delicate skin and natural-born beauty. She's simply like a celestial maiden from the ice palace that has come down to the mortal world. Numerous exclaims of admiration sounded out, and it caused the gazes of most people present here to shook over. Moreover, even some female guests whose limelight had been seized away couldn't refrain from looking over. After that, they saw a beautiful young woman in a violet dress walking over lightly. Her legs were long and slender, her fine waist was like a flexible willow branch, her neck was long like a swan, her skin was snow-white and crystalline, and her appearance was beautiful like a painting. Every single move she made revealed an extraordinary and proud bearing, and it caused the others to be unable to help but feel ashamed of their inferiority. As she walked over, she'd practically drawn over the gazes of everyone all along the way. No matter if it was man or woman, all of them looked towards her in unison, and even some renowned seniors had flickered gazes and were fiercely shocked. She frowned instead when he saw this young woman. Why is it her? This young woman was naturally Bailey Yen from the Eternal Spirit Mountain. She seemed to have noticed Xianxia a long time ago, and she had a composed expression as she walked over directly. What? You didn't expect that I would come? Bailey Yan's red lips opened lightly as she stopped by Xianxia's side, and her graceful and slender figure emitted a strand of a moving fragrance. I really didn't. Xianxia's gaze swept past the two old servants by Bailey Yan's side before withdrawing his gaze. He'd already discerned that those two old servants were earthly immortal realm experts. If it was in the past, he would naturally feel pressured when facing such a lineup, but now he wasn't worried at all. This is called a pleasant surprise, said Bailey Yen with a light grin. Her beautiful face glowed and revealed moving beauty, causing the surrounding crowd to be dazed. She frowned instead. Speak frankly if you have something to say. Bailey Yen took her time instead when she saw Xianxia being so impatient, and her clear eyes swept the surroundings before she said unhurriedly, Actually, there's no need for you to go through so much trouble to take a disciple. You just have to announce your name, and that marquee one would surely willingly send his son to you. She looked towards the side, and he noticed Chen Yen had seized the moment he started talking with Bailey Yen to leave, causing him to be slightly irritated. He knew that Chen Yen could be said to have taken an extremely great risk by coming here in his identity as a servant, and Chen Yen was most worried about being noticed by the others. However, now, Chen Yen had no choice but to leave because Bailey Yan's appearance had drawn a large number of gazes over here, and Chen Yen probably felt an extreme sense of loss. Perhaps Bailey Yen did it unintentionally, but her appearance had undoubtedly smothered the hopes of a young man to become strong. So how could she not be irritated? Don't blame me for being rude if you continue pestering me. She took a deep breath as he looked at the gorgeous young woman at the side, and he spoke calmly. Bailey Yen was stunned, and then suddenly burst into laughter like a flower that bloomed after the rain, elegant and moving. I really want to know how you'll be rude to me. As she spoke, she raised her snow-white and long neck while her clear eyes spun, and she stared at Xianxia provocatively. She suddenly started laughing as well. Do you know about the matter of Bing Shirtyen's maidservant, Shuyan? Betraying him? She's innately charming, alluring, and drop-dead gorgeous. And she was even at the earthly immortal realm. Now, she has become a respectful and reverent servant of mine that pours tear all day instead. How do you think it would feel if I made you like that? Bailey Yan's beautiful brows rose up. How dare you? She was an inheritor from the eternal spirit mountain that possessed a respected status and was capable of looking down upon most of her peers. Yet now, Xianxia had actually spoken about capturing her and making her into a servant. This was simply an extreme humiliation. Xianxia remained unmoved, and he replied with a question. Do you think I don't dare? Bailey Yan frowned, and her eyes were on the verge of spraying flames as she stared fiercely at Xianxia. For the first time, she noticed that the shrewdness and self-restraint she'd always been most proud of seemed to be utterly useless before this fellow. And she was infuriated and wished for nothing more than to tear this fellow apart every single time she met him. Ha! Distinguished guests. I'm sorry for not welcoming your arrival earlier. Right when Xianxia and Bailey Yan were staring at each other, a deep and heroic voice sounded out abruptly and instantly drew the attention of everyone present here. The person that came over wore a golden robe, and he had a tall figure and a dignified expression. He walked over in large strides while carrying a majestic and powerful aura. It was precisely the Marquis Wentianxua, a renowned earthly immortal realm expert. A powerfully built young man with starry eyes was following by his side, and the young man had a heroic bearing and ample spirit. There was no need to guess, this young man was surely the junior Marquis Wenhua. At the instant both of them made an appearance, they directly arrived before Bailey Yan under the respectful gazes of everyone present. And then Wentianxua said with a smile, I'm Wentianxua. May I know which sect young miss is from? Meanwhile, Bailey Yan had recovered her usual calm and composure, and she glanced casually at Xianxia when facing Wentianxua's question before she said indifferently, I came here this time only for the sake of looking for someone, and I have no intention of staying for long in your distinguished estate. As for my origins, there's no need to mention it. Her short words seemed to be flat yet vividly portrayed the arrogance in her bones. Wentianxua was only a marquis that was abundant in the world, and if it wasn't for a reason, she would utterly not spare such a person a single glance. Even if Wentianxua was an earthly immortal realm expert, she didn't take him seriously at all. This was her confidence as an inheritor of the eternal spirit mountain. Wentianxua was stunned, and then his expression became even more serious and solemn instead. The more Bailey Yan acted like this, the more he felt her origins were extraordinary. Coupled with her having the protection of two earthly immortal realm experts by her side, such a figure was absolutely not someone that would be deliberately mystifying. Haha! I understand. In the next moment, Wentianxua was already roaring with laughter, and then he looked at Xianxia and sized Xianxia up briefly before he smiled with surprise. This young hero is probably the person young Miss is looking for, right? He really does possess an imposing and extraordinary bearing. Xianxia shook his head instead. Marquis, you've misunderstood. I don't know her, and I'm not related to her in the slightest. As soon as these words were spoken, it wasn't just Wentianxua who was stunned. Even everyone in the surroundings was flabbergasted. Exactly what do these two intend to do? Xianxia's denial was so resolute and decisive that it didn't just cause everyone else to be astounded. Even Bailey Yan had never expected it, and she was slightly stunned before her beautiful eyes revealed undisguised fury. This fellow is too irritating. His tone seems as if I'm shamelessly asking him to get to know me. He's truly detestable. Bailey Yan gnashed her teeth with hatred before turning around with indignation. However, she didn't leave but intended to stay at the side and calm her feelings. She was very worried that if this were to continue, then she would surely be angered to the point of getting into a fight with Xianxia, and that wasn't her original intention. As soon as Bailey Yan left, the two old servants behind her naturally left along with her, and the gazes of everyone started to move towards Xianxia. Some young men were even extremely delighted when they saw this, and they swarmed over like a swarm of lascivious men that did everything in their power to please her because they wanted to form a relationship with this young woman with an otherworldly appearance and mysterious origins. In next to no time, Bailey Yen was surrounded like a true bright moon that was surrounded by a host of stars. Of course, some people of the older generation with ample experience had already discerned that this peerlessly beautiful young woman surely possessed an extraordinary background, so they warned all their juniors not to act rashly. There were still many people that shot their gazes towards Xianxia. After all of them noticed that since this young man actually dared to speak like that to the peerlessly beautiful young woman, his background would probably not be simple as well. When Tianxua didn't leave either. As the owner of the estate, he would naturally not be short-sighted to the point of thinking that a young man who dared speak like this to Bailey Yen was a rash and ignorant young man. Then may I know young hero's name? In the next moment, when Tianxua spoke with a warm smile on his face. My surname is Chun. Chun, she replied, yet wasn't willing to reveal his identity. He'd come for the sake of taking a disciple this time, and if they were to find out about his identity, then their attitudes would surely change greatly. If it was like that, he was very sure that the possibility of him successfully taking a disciple would increase greatly, but he would be unable to comprehensively observe exactly what sort of person this potential disciple of his was. In this way, he might become prejudiced, and this wasn't something that he hoped to see happen. Oh, so it's young hero Chen. When Tianxua completely didn't mind that she was unwilling to reveal his identity, and he said with a smile, I presume young hero Chun has come for the sake of my son, right? Exactly. I've come for the sake of taking a disciple. Chun, she nodded and spoke sparingly. Then what do you think about my son? When Tianxua had a burning gaze as he asked with a smile. I'm temporarily unable to discern anything, and it will depend on my assessment, replied Xianxia. From the beginning until the end, he didn't even spare a glance at the nearby Wenhua. His attitude caused Wen Tianxua to be unable to help but be stunned, and he seemed to be lost in thought. But his son, Wenhua, was slightly displeased in his heart because he was still young and impetuous. As the junior marquis, he received solemn treatment wherever he went. For example, in these recent days, even if those experts of the various powers saw him, all of them would praise him repeatedly and were extremely approving of him. There was rarely anyone that was indifferent like Xianxia. Coupled with Xianxia's young and unfamiliar appearance, and Xianxia having come here alone. Moreover, merely based on outward appearances, he didn't seem like an expert that came from a large sect. So all of this caused Wenhua to feel slight aversion towards Xianxia. But even though he was young, he was absolutely not a rash person, and he'd sensed a trace of unusualness from his father's attitude towards Xianxia, so he'd constantly restrained the feelings in his heart. Yet now, when he heard that Xianxia was even stingy with an evaluation, he was slightly unable to restrain himself and couldn't help but ask, Young Master Chun, may I know exactly what sort of assessments are needed to become your disciple? As soon as these words were spoken, it instantly drew the attention of many because some that had come here this time them were representatives of the various powers that were determined to take Wenhua as a disciple for their sects. So all of them walked forward with vigilant expressions. They seemed as if they were deeply afraid that the meat in their plate would be snatched away by someone else. She glanced inadvertently at Wenhua when he heard this. This little fellow looks to be respectful, yet he intentionally raised his voice slightly when he spoke these words to draw the attention of everyone. He undoubtedly wants to rely on the influence of the others to test me. Of course, since he possessed such a scheming ability at a young age, he could really be considered to be wise and intelligent. But she didn't like others playing such tricks before him. My assessment is very simple. Even if the person that I chose possesses inferior natural endowments, I'll surely foster him with all my might, whereas if it isn't someone I select, then even if the person is an innate saint, that person would be like trash to me and would be of no consequence. She replied indifferently. Wenhua's brows raised as he discerned the warning within Xianxia's words. When Tianxua patted Wenhua on the shoulder to indicate that Wenhua should calm down. He was similarly slightly displeased by Xianxia's words, but he wouldn't display it on his face because he still possessed this level of subtlety. But someone was unable to restrain himself. An old man with gray hair and beard sneered. How conceited! Everyone in the world knows that cultivation is difficult, so how could a weakling be compared with a genius? Someone else said coldly, I have to say, this friend is too naive. Selecting a disciple and passing on the Tao is such an important matter, and it's related to the flame of inheritance of a sect. If one only takes in those of inferior natural endowment, then the Tao inheritance of a sect will be destroyed in no time. Someone was even more direct, and he berated. You're simply treating it like child's play. Cut the crap. Instantly, Xianxia seemed to have become a criminal that had been condemned by the public, and he was stared at furiously by everyone. A commotion like this caused the gazes of everyone in the surroundings to be drawn over. Only Bailey Yen was sneering in her heart. These bastards are really ignorant. If they find out about Xianxia's identity, then their expressions would probably be very colorful, right? Of course, she didn't have any intention to expose Xianxia's identity because if she did that, it would only grow Xianxia's influence, and she wasn't willing to see that scene occur. Xianxia's expressions remained unchanged, and he seemed carefree as he silently listened to everyone denounce him. He waited until they spoke to the point their mouths were dry before he swept everyone with his gaze. Are all of you finished? Everyone couldn't help but be stunned. What sort of attitude is this? Marquis, there are too many people in the world that gain a reputation by deceit now. If you're going to select a master for the junior marquis, then you have to be careful so as to avoid holding back the junior marquis's outstanding talent. Someone suggested to Wen Tianxua. Everyone else chimed in when they heard this, and they'd branded Xianxia as a person that gained a reputation by deceit. Wen Tianxua knew he had to stand out when he saw this, and he roared with laughter right away. Fellow Taoists, I know that everyone is thinking for the sake of my son, but all of you have spoken in a slightly biased manner. Everyone was stunned, and someone frowned as he said, Marquis, what do you mean? When Tianxua glanced at the nearby Xianxia and said with a smile, in my opinion, this young hero Chun is absolutely not an ordinary figure, and what he said has a certain level of truth as well. When Hua said from the side as well, right, young Master Chan seems to have a composed bearing and isn't like someone who talks nonsense. Since he spoke like this, he surely possesses an extremely formidable strength. As he spoke, he looked towards Xianxia and actually revealed a wisp of respect and admiration. The hearts of everyone couldn't help but tighten when they saw this scene. Shit, the junior marquis actually seems to look favorably upon this kid. Xianxia glanced at Wen Hua instead, and then he didn't speak any further. I'm very curious. Exactly what sort of ability does this young hero Chun possess? A gray-clothed old man suddenly stood out and stared at Xianxia with a burning gaze. I'm unoccupied and have nothing due. I wonder if young hero Chun will have a spar with me and broaden my horizons. The others were burning with eagerness as well. They wanted to completely destroy Xianxia's influence in this way and make the junior marquis to change his opinion. Xianxia noticed with a single glance that these 30-plus cultivators were mostly at the nether transformation realm, and only a few were at the earthly immortal realm. These earthly immortal realm experts had maintained silence from the beginning, and they seemed to be tranquil yet were extremely arrogant instead. Obviously, they disdained to waste their breath on him. Haha! Fellow Taoists, don't lose your temper. It's my honor that all of you can do me the favor of gathering at my estate this time, and fighting would be unpleasant instead. When Tianxua laughed as he spoke and stood out to make peace. Marquis, this person is arrogantly talking nonsense, and I suspect he has ulterior motives. The gray-clothed old man that challenged Xianxia earlier spoke coldly. Xianxia originally didn't intend to pay any attention to all this, but he couldn't help but frown when he heard this gray-clothed old man slander him like this. You're already so old, so you better take responsibility for your own words. When Hua's spirits were instantly refreshed when he heard this, and his eyes revealed a wisp of excitement. They're finally going to fight, and I'll know right away if this fellow is really so formidable. The gray-clothed old man exploded with rage when he saw Xianxia actually trying to teach him a lesson, and he was just about to speak when an unexpected event occurred right at this moment. Haha! How exciting! Brothers, surround Marquis Wen's estate, and don't allow anyone to leave. A wave of cackling sounded out and shook the heavens and the earth. Accompanying this voice was a surging cloud of blood that covered an expanse of 30 kilometers converging together. and it enveloped the entire sky above Marquis Wen's estate and emitted a dense aura of blood and killing intent. At the same time, a few figures tore through the sky. All of them wore blood-red robes and possessed monstrous auras as they stood proudly in midair and looked down at everyone within the estate. They were like numerous bloody suns whose entire bodies emanated a terrifying aura that was evil and vicious. Even the naked eye could clearly see strands of dense and almost material halos of sin coiled around their bodies, and they were filled with the glow of blood and resentment that shot into the sky, causing others to be unable to help but feel their scalps go numb from just looking at them. In merely an instant, the entire world fell into a dark red color. Gloomy winds surged while baleful chi coiled up into the sky, and it was like a peerless demon had walked out from purgatory, causing the scene to be extremely shocking. No one had expected that such a shocking and unexpected event would actually occur during the 14th birthday of the junior Marquis, and it caused everyone in the estate to instantly fall into great panic. It's Huai Ming, Hua Yi, Xuefeng, Bei Huang, and Bai Kong. The expressions of Wen Tianxua and the others turned grim. These 5 earthly immortal realm experts were devils with heavy sins, and they were ranked in the top 100 of the villain rankings. They were renowned evil existences in the entire dark reverie. Presently, these evil devils that spread poison throughout the world had come here jointly. Obviously, they'd come with ill intent. Great sinners. Chun-Shi was calm and composed instead, and he was even slightly delighted. He never imagined that the situation would unfold in such a coincidental manner. He was just worrying about how to complete the assignment of enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens, and his enemies had obediently given themselves up to him. Huai Ming, Hua Yi, Xuefeng, Bei Huang, Bai Kong. When these 5 names were mentioned, everyone thought about monstrous crimes, blood, and violence at the first possible moment. They were infamous villains that were wanted by the 10 great immortal sects, and they were ranked in the top 100. Every single one of them was dyed fully with blood and had committed heavy crimes. For example, the most vicious amongst them, Huai Ming, was an evil cultivator that had slaughtered 3,000 infants many years ago and extracted their blood and souls as a sacrifice to cultivate an evil cultivation technique. His methods were so cruel that it caused others to boil with anger, and the crimes he committed were too numerous to be recorded. But up until now, he was still well and alive. Firstly, it was because his strength was too formidable, and it was at the 3rd level of the earthly immortal realm. Secondly, he was too cunning and cautious, while he moved swiftly and indeterminately from place to place, causing him to be extremely difficult to capture. Presently, Huai Ming had appeared jointly with another 4 great sinners, and they'd blocked off the entirety of Marquis Wen's estate, causing the expressions of everyone to become grim and be filled with fear and unease. After all, these were 5 cruel and vicious earthly immortal realm experts. Bloody clouds covered the sky while killing intent assaulted their faces, and the atmosphere in the entire Marquis Wen's estate was strained to the limit. Wen Tianxua had a heavy expression that changed indeterminately, but he didn't fall into panic and suddenly shouted explosively, "Huai Ming, why have all of you come to my estate? Could it be that you aren't afraid of the wrath of the heavens?" His voice was like a thunderclap that reverberated through the surroundings. Everyone in the estate unconsciously felt much more at ease when they heard this. Right, the Marquis will be there even if the sky collapses, so why should we feel panic? Not to mention that amongst the cultivators from all over that had come for the sake of the junior Marquis's 14th birthday, there were a few earthly immortal realm experts, so those villains had to weight their strengths before committing any evil. Humph! Encounter the wrath of the heavens? I'm still fucking well and alive now, so what can the heavens do to me? In midair, Huai Ming, who wore a blood-red robe, had an icy cold and ruthless expression as he stood there with his hands behind his back and sneered. Old goat Tianxua, if you continue feigning ignorance, then don't blame me for fucking washing your estate with blood without leaving anyone alive. When Tianxua frowned and said with a deep voice, "I don't understand what you mean." "You don't understand?" Huai Ming cackled as his eyes that were cruel like blades stared coldly at Wen Tianxua. "Alright, I'll fucking say it one more time. Hand over the treasure map to enter the Sky Dao abandoned mountain, and me and my brothers will leave right away." "Exactly, old goat Tianxua. You thought you kept it completely secret, yet you didn't know the few of us had set our sights on the Sky Dao abandoned mountain a long time ago. The forces you sent into the mountain to investigate have been fucking killed by all of us. Do you think there's any need to conceal it now? Quickly hand over the treasure map. Otherwise, don't blame me for being merciless. The nearby Huai sneered. The treasure map to the Sky Dao abandoned mountain? The hearts of everyone was filled with shock when they heard this, and they revealed expressions of disbelief. All of them were clearly aware exactly what sort of terrifying power existed on the Sky Dao abandoned mountain a very long time ago. Unfortunately, it vanished into thin air overnight, and in the past 10,000 years, there hadn't been a single person that was able to find a single trace of it. But everyone firmly believed that the Dao inheritance and treasure vault of the Sky Dao Palace surely existed, and it just hadn't surfaced. Now, Huai Ming had actually said that when Tianxua possessed a treasure map to the Sky Dao abandoned mountain, if this were to be spread, the entire cultivation world would probably be shocked, right? Instantly, the gazes everyone looked at when Tianxua with changed. Even Chun Shi himself was slightly stunned and said to himself, if it's true, then what's the sky key in my possession? Right, a map is a map and a key is a key. Even if this marquee one was able to find the treasure vault, he's probably unable to enter it. When Tianxua went silent, and then he said abruptly, exactly. I do indeed possess an incomplete treasure map, but I'm not sure if it's related to the Sky Dao abandoned mountain. But no matter what, I'll absolutely not hand over this treasure map to all of you. As he spoke, he suddenly turned around to look at the three old men that were standing silently at the side. Fellow Taoists Qing Ping, Hui Zhong, and Lu Qi. If I'm able to obtain your assistance this time and overcome this crisis, then I'll surely present the treasure map for all of us to inspect. How about it? After that, his gaze moved to look at Bailey Yen. Similarly, if I'm able to obtain the assistance of the two experts behind Young Miss, then Young Miss can similarly share this treasure map. Qing Ping, Hui Zhong, and Lu Qi were the mere 3 earthly immortal realm experts that had come from the various powers, whereas those 2 old servants behind Bailey Yen were similarly earthly immortal realm experts. Coupled with Wen Tianxua himself, it would be an entire 6 earthly immortal realm experts, and if these forces were to converge together, they would indeed have no need to fear Huai Ming and the others. When everyone saw this, they heaved a sigh of relief while being unable to help but admire Wen Tianxua's resolution, because being able to make such a decision in such a short period of time was something an ordinary person was probably unable to accomplish at all. You don't know what's good for you? Allying with others? Old goat Tianxua, you really won't give up. Ha. This old goat thinks that 1/5 of us have come. It's fine to tell all of you the truth. We 5 brothers have also invited the Chia from the Cryptic Ridge, Spirit Profundity Temple's Ziyun, and Jade Light Ocean's Lord Huang Jiao. The 3 of them are holding down the fort at the Sky Dao abandoned mountain, and they'll arrive instantaneously with a single call from us. How can all of you resist us? Huai Ming and the others roared with laughter, and they carried arrogant expressions and haughty airs. When everyone heard the names Chia, Ziyun, and Lord Huang Jiao, their relaxed hearts couldn't help but constrict tightly, while their expressions became unsightly to the extreme. These 3 earthly immortal realm experts were similarly villains that had committed countless crimes, and they were great sinners that had committed all sorts of heinous and unpardonable crimes. Moreover, their rankings on the villain rankings were even higher. Now, they'd actually joined forces with Huai Ming and the others, causing everyone to seem as if they were struck by lightning and feel unprecedented despair and helplessness. They were an entire 8 earthly immortal realm experts with monstrous crimes, and this force was sufficient to sweep through any first-rate power. At this moment, even when Tianxua's heart went cold, and his expression was gloomy to the extreme. Old goat Tianxua, will you hand the treasure map over obediently? Or do you want us to wash this place with blood before plundering your corpse for the treasure map? Everything is up to a single decision of yours. Huai Ming had his hands behind his back while cackling, and he had a complacent and arrogant appearance as if victory was within his grasp. Swoosh! In the next moment, almost everyone revealed nervous expressions and had their gazes placed on Wen Tianxua. It could be said that their lives were held in Tianxua's hands, and they were waiting for his decision. Even Qingping, Huizhong, and Lu Qi had heavy expressions and were filled with anxiety because it was related to their lives. So they had no choice but to be nervous. If it was possible, they would rather make Tianxua hand over the treasure map right now. After all, no matter how important the treasures in the Sky Dao abandoned mountain was, it couldn't compare to the importance of their lives. This sort of thought was something most people that were present here had. It was even to the extent that the junior Marquis Wenhua was looking at his father with an expression of despair, and he felt unprecedented helplessness. He was still young, only 14 years of age, and he didn't want to die just like this. Amongst the people present, perhaps only Chen Shi, Bailey Yen, and the two old servants behind Bailey Yen were the most composed. Do you need me to help you escape? All you need to do is agree to tell me how you comprehended the eternal Tao scripture. Such a condition is sufficiently simple, right? Suddenly, Bailey Yen arrived by Chen Shi's side and said via voice transmission, "Don't worry, I absolutely have good intentions. After all, even though your cultivation is matchless amongst your peers, you're probably still no match for an experienced and brutal earthly immortal realm expert. Even I don't dare guarantee being able to defeat them. But if it's fleeing, then I'm still able to accomplish it easily." She swore to God that these words of hers were absolutely sincere. Unfortunately, she never expected that during these 5 years of time, Chen Shi's strength could already not be compared to before, and it was simply like the difference between the heavens and the earth. Chen Shi glanced at her and said calmly, "I myself have something to say. If I'm able to kill these great sinners, then can you stop disturbing me in the future?" "You?" Bailey Yen was stunned and was infuriated to the point her plump chest rose and fell rapidly, and it drew out an alluring outline that shook the soul. She almost gnashed her teeth to the point of shattering before glaring fiercely at Chen Shi. "You don't know how to appreciate the good intentions of others." Chen Shi paid no further attention to her. In the next moment, he'd already flashed out to suddenly stand in midair. The talisman armament was held up in midair while suffused with a pitch-black and dim sheen, and there was a chaotic aura that seemed like the source of the world contained within it. Bailey Yen was completely dazed and said with a stutter, This fellow hates me that much? For the sake of making me stop disturbing him, he even disregards his life?" The others within the estate were stunned and astounded. Why has this fellow come out abruptly? On the other hand, those cultivators that attacked Chen Shi earlier were greatly delighted. "All right, we'll let this kid that gained his name from deceit to charge against them. Right, we'll allow him to block them off for us first. He's really courting death, so who can he blame? I'll surely take him as my master if he's able to survive." The junior Marquis Wenhua clenched his fists tightly, but he knew very clearly in his heart that this decision of his would probably be impossible to be realized. After all, these were 5 earthly immortal realm experts with monstrous crimes on their hands, and there were another 3 villains that hadn't made an appearance. Even though he sensed that Chen Shi was ferocious, he didn't think Chen Shi could survive at all. Haha! Am I fucking seeing things? A kid at the nether transformation realm actually dares to come over alone. When he saw Chen Shi appear abruptly, Huai Ming couldn't help but be stunned, and then laughed with sarcasm. "Oh, his courage deserves compliment. There are very few young men like this nowadays. Bring it on. We can kill him as an example and make that old goat Tianxua give up." Courage that deserves compliment? He seems like a rash and retarded young man. He charged out like an idiot while thinking he's very heroic. Yet he doesn't know that this is the most foolish action. All of you look, even those people in the estate are laughing at him. He's truly fucking pitiable. Hui, Xuefeng, Bei Huang, and Bai Kong couldn't refrain from laughing as well, and they stared at Chen Shi as if they were looking at a dead man. Those that commit crimes remain at large, while those that do good aren't able to have a peaceful end. Enforcing justice for the heavens, it really must be done. Chen Shi couldn't help but sigh when he saw this. In the next moment, his eyes went cold and flashed with a piercingly cold light while his bearing changed completely. He was like a divine sword hidden within an abyss that had started to emanate a glow, flicker with a sharp light, reveal its loftiness, and become fierce. In the sky above Marquis Wen's estate, Xianxia's battle intent blazed, and he seemed like an unsheathed sword, causing even the space to tremble and draw the attention of the great sinners before him. "Little kid, the sword in your hand isn't bad. Aren't you going to offer it up to me?" Hui's eyes narrowed as a pair of fiery red wings suddenly appeared beneath his ribs with a rumble, and they were coiled a myriad of strands of jet-black glows of sin before he charged directly at Xianxia. He was a fire-wing phoenix who lived within foul miasma that had cultivated to the point of gaining intelligence. He was extremely cunning and ruthless, and he loved to collect various treasures, so he'd plundered countless cultivators of their treasures all through these few thousands of years. This caused his gaze to be extremely discerning, and he'd discerned with a single glance that the talisman armament in Xianxia's hand wasn't ordinary. Bang! His sharp claw was like a hook that could tear the sky apart, and it tore through space while carrying a jet-black glow of sin before instantly arriving above Xianxia. Soul-assimilating skybreaker claw. Haha! Brother Hui relied on this supreme secret technique to kill numerous earthly immortal realm experts. This rash young man that charged out like an idiot is probably going to die on the spot. Hui Ming and the others roared endlessly with arrogant laughter when they saw this. Everyone in the estate couldn't help but frown when they saw this, and some even couldn't refrain from closing their eyes. This is an attack from an earthly immortal realm expert whose hands are dyed with the blood of countless people. How can this young hero Chun, that looks so young, possibly be able to resist it? Hui even revealed a savage smile. He's just a stupid and retarded kid that dared to come throw his life away. It just happens that I can make him an example. How dare a tiny pearl compete in brightness with the moon? Xianxia stood ramrod straight while Dao insights rumbled around his body, and the talisman armament soared through the sky and slashed out a brilliant sword chi that deduced creation. He struck resolutely while carrying an aura of supremacy that belonged to the Lord of Creation. That's... Hui's heart jerked as he felt an extreme feeling of danger. His combat experience was extraordinary, causing him to instantly strike with his ultimate technique, the soul-assimilating world shaker. As soon as the sword chi approached him, a piercingly cold divine might descended into the world, and it condensed into the figures of numerous gods of evil that were suffused with the glow of sin. Xianxia completely disregarded it and directly struck his sword at it. Bang! The sword chi seemed to create the universe and construct the future. It directly shattered all the gods of evil before striking Hui to the point his entire body shook before a mouthful of blood sprayed from his mouth while cracking sounds resounded out from his entire body. Moreover, cracks started to appear on his body while countless bones within his body were broken. His body was like a rag as it flew out in midair and collided with the wall of the estate before being bounced back onto the ground and rolling repeatedly on the ground. He was utterly unable to control himself, and he seemed as miserable could be. He didn't have the slightest aura of arrogance and haughtiness. Everyone was shocked, and their eyeballs almost fell out. The battle had just begun while they originally thought that Xianxia would surely lose his life under this strike. Never had they imagined that such a great turn would occur in the situation, and a single strike from Xianxia would directly slash Hui to the point he rolled on the ground like a gourd and was unable to get up. Exactly what sort of terrifying cultivation would be needed to accomplish this? After all, Hui was a second-level earthly immortal realm expert that was ranked 89th on the villain rankings. He possessed monstrous might and heavy sins, yet he'd actually been defeated with a single strike now? Spatial darkness of sin. Right at the moment Hui was defeated, Xuefeng transformed into a blood-red cloud that charged directly at Xianxia's back. At the moment he made a move, the force he exerted was very small, but it gradually amplified before transforming into a kingdom of sin within the small space in his palm. The aura of sin raged through the heavens and the earth, and it was like demons from the 18 levels of hell had emerged in unison to envelop Xianxia. Hui's defeat allowed him to understand that this young man was absolutely not a rash young man but had something to rely on. So as soon as he made a move, he executed his trump card with the hopes of annihilating Xianxia in this strike. Xianxia didn't even look back before spinning the talisman armament backwards, and it swept out horizontally while flickering with sword chi that was like a sweeping river of stars or a dragon emerging from its lair. Space rumbled as it imploded, and it crushed the kingdom of sin that Hui had condensed. And then he took a step forward before forcefully colliding with Xue Feng like a landslide. Xue Feng was furious and retreated hastily while crying out sharply, but it was too late. His entire body split apart into pieces from being knocked by Xianxia, and he transformed into a myriad of wriggling pieces of meat that was in a state of limbo between death. He suffered a consequence that was even more miserable than Hui. Shit! Retreat quickly! Huai Ming, Bei Huang, and Bai Kong noticed the situation wasn't good and flashed backwards. Never had they expected that this stupid kid that had appeared abruptly would actually become a god of slaughter in an instant, and he actually defeated Hui and Xue Feng instantaneously with a cultivation at the nether transformation realm, causing it to feel as if earthly immortal realm experts were like paper before him. If it was said that Hui's defeat was from carelessness, then Xue Feng's defeat was absolutely not luck. What did this mean? It meant the young man before them possessed a combat strength that had already arrived at an astonishing state, and it had broken through the shackles of his cultivation since a long time ago to attain a height that all nether transformation realm cultivators had never attained. So they intended to avoid him temporarily. But, at this moment, Xianxia's killing intent was surging. He grabbed out in midair and executed the grand confinement Dao art, causing space to be frozen before Bai Kong was instantly confined completely. No matter how he struggled, he was unable to move in the slightest, and he was like a bird in a cage, a fish in a net, and was bound up tightly. Come back here, Xianxia pulled. Bai Kong had an expression of terror on his face while he was dragged back forcefully, and he descended before Xianxia. Xianxia grabbed Bai Kong's head before twisting it to the side, and it caused him to be twisted to the point the bones in his body broke inch by inch before he collapsed to the ground like a ball of mush. In a short period of time, 3 earthly immortal realm experts with monstrous crimes had been crushed by Xianxia in a few moves. The figures of everyone present went stiff when they saw this scene, and they were like clay statues. Every single one of their faces were filled with disbelief, and they were flabbergasted. 3 earthly immortal realm experts were defeated. Just like this? Who exactly is that young man? How can he possess such a terrifying combat strength? Those cultivators that attacked and ridiculed Xianxia earlier were shocked to the point of going pale and feeling fear and panic. I actually offended such an existence. When they thought about how they'd insulted Xianxia as someone who'd obtained his reputation through deceit, all of these cultivators were terrified and embarrassed, and they truly wished for nothing more than to find a hole to hide themselves in. He really does possess an extraordinary background. He possessed such a cultivation yet exploded out with such a terrifying combat strength. Even the peerless and monstrous geniuses of the 10 great immortal sects would probably be unable to accomplish this. Could it be that he's a distinguished disciple from the unknown lands? When Tianxua muttered while his heart thumped, if my son is able to be chosen by this distinguished disciple of the unknown lands, then it would surely be a great fortune. Father, I want to take Mr. Chen as my master. When Hua's small face was covered in admiration and respect because Xianxia's strength had completely subdued him. He thought that Xianxia would die for sure, yet who would have imagined that this young hero Chen would be so formidable? We'll speak about it later. When Tianxua took a deep breath and indicated to Wen Hua that he should calm down. After 5 years, this fellow has actually grown to such a height. How exactly did he cultivate during these 5 years? Bailey Yen muttered while her clear eyes were filled with ripples of extraordinary splendor. At this moment, even she had no choice but to admit that Xianxia was truly too heaven-defying. And even if it was in the entire unknown lands and secluded paradise, there weren't many peerless figures with such natural endowment. Princess, it's probably impossible for us to capture this kid with our strengths. One of the 2 old servants that had been standing silently behind Bailey Yen spoke abruptly, and his voice carried a trace of terror as well. Exactly. According to my observation, this kid's combat strength is sufficient to go against a 4th-level earthly immortal realm expert, and it's even slightly superior. Even if an ordinary 5th-level earthly immortal realm expert were to make a move, it would probably be impossible to keep this kid from escaping. The other old servant sighed with emotion. Bailey Yan's figure stiffened, and she was completely dumbstruck. Even a 5th-level earthly immortal realm expert is incapable of keeping this kid from escaping? Of course, she was very aware that these old servants of hers were speaking about ordinary earthly immortal realm experts. After all, there were peerless and brilliant figures in the earthly immortal realm as well, and they couldn't be strictly divided by cultivation level. But even then, Xianxia's combat strength could already shock the world. In midair, Xianxia stood upright while his clothes fluttered with the wind. Hui, Xuefeng, and Baikong were by his feet, and they lay there limply like dead dogs. Xuefeng was the most miserable. He was blasted into a myriad of wriggling pieces of flesh, and no matter how hard he tried, he was unable to reconstruct his body. Huai Ming and Bei Huang stood far away in the sky, and their expressions were heavy, anxious, and bewildered. I never imagined that us brothers who roamed freely and laughed proudly through the world would be stopped here. Junior, let my 3 brothers go and we'll leave right away. How about it? Huai Ming took a deep breath and spoke slowly. I'm not afraid to tell you that Chia, Ziyun, and Lord Huang Jiao have already received news of what has happened here, and they'll be arriving right away. Perhaps you'll be able to escape safely with your strength. But aren't you worried that we'll vent our rage onto the myriads of living beings in Corona City? Bei Huang spoke gloomily as well. Exactly. Washing this city with blood isn't difficult for us. And if you want to see 1,000,000 of living beings dying because of you, then go ahead and make a move. As soon as these words were spoken, the bodies of everyone went cold because they firmly believed that these fellows that had committed countless crimes would absolutely dare to do it. Starting to threaten me since you can't defeat me? Xianxia's expression remained unmoved, and he said indifferently in a carefree manner, I forgot to tell all of you. I don't intend to let any one of you off this time. Haha, what a joke. How many of us can you pursue if we want to leave? Huai Ming laughed with a sharp voice, and a wisp of ruthlessness flashed on his face. At the very least, so long as just one of us brothers survives, then we'll surely slaughter the entirety of Corona City and leave it in devastation in the future, and we won't let a soul survive. All of you can feel free to try. As he spoke, Xianxia used actions to prove his resolution and killing intent. The talisman armament in his hand spun while a cold glow arose abruptly, and he directly slashed off 3 bloody heads. At this moment, Hui Xuefeng and Baikong had died miserably on the spot. Swish! As soon as the 3 infamous great sinners, Hui, Xuefeng, and Baikong, were killed, 3 strands of dense and almost material jet black glow of sin shot into the sky before transforming into chilly winds, vengeful spirits, skeletons, and evil creatures that whistled and raged through the heavens and the earth. Instantly, the heavens and the earth seemed to have fallen into a terrifying and ghastly hell. That was the energy of sin that was of the utmost evil and malice. This scale of the glow of sin could only be condensed into form from torturing and killing countless living beings, and the amount of crimes that aroused widespread indignation had been committed by these 3 earthly immortal realm experts was obvious from this scene. The hearts of everyone trembled when they saw this scene. On one hand, they were shocked by how resolutely Xianxia acted, and on the other hand, they were terrified by how great this glow of sin was. After all, if such energy of sin were to spread out, the myriad of lives in the entire Corona City would be tainted, have their souls seized, and perish on the spot. Huai Ming and Bei Huang were instantly shocked and furious to the extreme when they saw Hui and the others being killed, and they didn't dare believe that Xianxia would actually act so ruthlessly. But when they noticed that glow of sin that shot into the sky, both of them couldn't help but be moved. They practically didn't hesitate in the slightest to open their mouths at the same time and suck fiercely like a whale taking water in, and the glow of sin that covered the sky rumbled as if transformed into torrents that charged towards them. The glow of sin was undoubtedly a greatly beneficial thing to evil cultivators like them, and it was like how righteous cultivators consumed immortal wine. It possessed unbelievable benefits to their cultivations. Huai Ming and Bei Huang even firmly believed that so long as they completely absorbed the glow of sin from Hui and the others, they would even be able to charge into the next level of the earthly immortal realm in a short period of time. After all, this was the energy of sin that had been condensed throughout the lifetime of 3 earthly immortal realm experts, so how could it possibly be ordinary? Rumble. However, right when the two of them had just taken action, an enormous bang that shook the 9 heavens resounded out, and it rumbled out from within the surging glow of sin. After that, a golden lotus platform that was like a mountain floated up into appearance, and it radiated a myriad of dazzling golden light and emanated waves of the sound of Buddhist chanting, causing it to seem like the chanting of the gods and the rumbling of the grand Tao. Instantly, the entire heavens and earth surged with a grand aura of eliminating all sin and cleansing all evil. The 12 Lotus Platform Deliverance Tao Art. As soon as this golden lotus platform appeared, the jet-black glow of sin that enveloped the heavens and the earth was like the night that had encountered the radiance of the sun, like snow melting in boiling water, and it emitted waves of extremely ear-piercing and miserable shrill cries that seemed like it was howling for mercy and struggling to escape. However, under the illumination of the golden light from the lotus platform, all of this was futile. Everyone present could clearly see that the vengeful spirits, ghosts, evil creatures, and so on and so forth that covered the sky were crushed, obliterated, and purified. Not to mention escape, they didn't even have the room to struggle. It was even to the extent that after the gold light spread out, it shocked Huaiming and Bei Huang to the point of retreating repeatedly before executing techniques to defend themselves. This golden light contained the true essence of universal purification, and it innately countered all evil. It even carried an extremely terrifying destructive force towards the glow of sin, causing them to have no choice but to take precautions against it. At the same time, Xianxia clearly sensed a wisp of gold light of virtue effuse out within his black hole world, causing his black hole world to be even purer and firmer. It was even to the extent that it faintly carried a trace of the aura of natural virtue and peace. Instantly, Xianxia felt his Tao heart become much more solid, and the imperceptible mysterious energy in his Tao heart started to become clear. Even though it was still extremely weak, if it were to develop according to this momentum, then it probably wouldn't be long before it would condense into an almost material energy of the Tao heart. It was a force that came from the Tao heart, and it was extremely mysterious. Even terrifying existences at the heavenly immortal realm were rarely capable of grasping and cultivating it because this energy was too imperceptible and elusive. Just like the elusive Tao of the heavens, the energy of the Tao heart was similar an existence that was the most difficult to comprehend. I never expected that I would even be able to condense the gold light of virtue and solidify my Tao heart after annihilating great sinners. Other spirit pills can't compare with such a miraculous effect. Xianxia seemed to be lost in thought. At this moment, the energy of sin that covered the sky had already vanished. Whereas the gazes everyone within the estate shot at Xian, she had already changed from their initial astonishment and shock to transform into deep reverence. All the techniques executed by this young man were unbelievable and terrifying to the extreme, and they had no choice but to feel reverence. Now, do the both of you still have anything to say? Or perhaps, both of you want to wait for your backup? Xianxia raised his head abruptly with a gaze that was like lightning, and it locked coldly onto the distant Huaiming and Bei Huang. At this moment, both of them had indeterminate expressions. Xianxia's strength caused them to feel extreme terror, and they were clearly aware that if they relied solely on their strengths, they might really not be a match for Xianxia. Especially when this kid was extremely ruthless, resolute, and utterly unafraid of all threats. They were slightly at a loss for what to do when facing a stubborn and overbearing figure. Right at this moment, a violet cloud suddenly drifted over from the distant horizon. If one looked carefully, the violet cloud was surprisingly condensed into form from numerous droplets of violet blood, and it emitted an extremely horrifying, ghastly, and bloody aura. As soon as this violet cloud appeared, this entire expanse of the heavens and the earth was filled with a ruthless, evil, and extremely icy-cold aura that seemed like a cold and brutal devil had suddenly emerged from hell into the realm of the living. Priest Ziyun. When Tianxua's expression suddenly went grim when he saw this, and his heart that was originally at ease couldn't help but rise to his throat once more. If Huaiming and the others were great devils, then Priest Ziyun was absolutely a king of devil, and he was extremely terrifying. Even the two old servants behind Bailey Yen couldn't help but frown when they saw this expanse of violet clouds, and they revealed a wisp of seriousness of their faces for the first time. Instantly, the atmosphere turned back to as it was before, and everyone was anxious and fearful. Big Brother Ziyun, you've finally come. Huai Ming and Bei Huang revealed expressions of delight when they saw this because Priest Ziyun possessed a cultivation at the 4th level of the earthly immortal realm, and his strength was similarly terrifying to the extreme. It was obvious what sort of terrifying existence he was from his ranking as 49th on the villain rankings. The facts were indeed so. This priest Ziyun was formed from a violet cloud in the depths of the ocean of sin that had attained the Tao, and he'd cultivated for no less than 10,000 years, causing his cultivation to be extremely deep. His character was gloomy and ruthless, and he'd even slaughtered a few tens of cities that had over 1 million citizens for the sake of refining a magic treasure. He was absolutely an overlord amongst evil cultivators and was infamous throughout the world. If it wasn't for the sake of unearthing the treasures within the Sky Dao abandoned mountain, Huai Ming would be utterly incapable of gaining the assistance of an old monster like Priest Ziyun with his ability. Ha! Not only have I come this time, even fellow Taoist Chia and Lord Huang Jiao have come as well. Warm laughter suddenly sounded out from within the expanse of violet clouds. Rumble. Along with this voice, the extremely large expanse of violet clouds suddenly shrunk to reveal 3 figures, and the person in the lead was an old priest that wore a violet-colored Taoist robe. He was tall, had a benevolent and kind countenance, and his face was covered in smiles. He held a horsetail brush that was snow-white like silver, and he seemed sage-like and was utterly unlike an overlord amongst evil cultivators. Chia and Lord Huang Jiao were at his sides. These two people were similarly infamous existences on the villain rankings. One of them was formed from a spirit mountain, and the other was a rare yellow-scaled 3-headed WYRM. In terms of strength, both of them were superior to Huai Ming and Bei Huang. As soon as these 3 people made an appearance, the atmosphere at the scene instantly became extremely oppressive while the expression of everyone became unsightly to the extreme, and even breathing felt much more difficult. One is at the 4th level of the earthly immortal realm while 2 are at the 3rd level of the earthly immortal realm. But their strengths seem to be even more formidable than Huai Ming and the others, so killing them will be slightly troublesome. She raised his eyes to sweep Priest Ziyun and the others with his gaze before withdrawing it, and his expression was calm and composed. Even though he felt it was troublesome, he didn't feel any fear. Early on, before he'd returned to the sect, he'd already dared to fight Shuyan and had captured her successfully. Now, he'd entered into closed-door cultivation within the world of stars for 40 years and tempered himself in the Sword Cave for a period of time. So his strength had attained an inconceivable height since a long time ago. Not to mention a 4th-level earthly immortal realm expert, he would even dare fight an expert at the 5th level of the earthly immortal realm. Coupled with the talisman armament in his hand that had advanced into a quality capable of comparing with a true immortal artifact after it absorbed the chaotic source chi from within the chaotic source crystal, why would he be afraid of a few great sinners? Oh? It was this little brother that killed fellow Taoists Huai Shuefeng and Bai Kong? That's really extraordinary. Meanwhile, Priest Ziyun had found out about everything from Huai Ming, and he sized Xianxia up with slight surprise before chuckling. Little brother, out of consideration towards the difficulty of you attaining your cultivation, why don't you listen to me and just leave now? I guarantee that absolutely no one will stop you. His voice was warm, causing others to feel as if they were bathed by a sprint breeze, and he seemed to have utterly no intention to take revenge for Huai and the others. However, when these words entered into the ears of everyone within the estate, it wasn't inferior to a thunderclap, and it caused all their expressions to go grim. If Xianxia were to leave just like this, then what would they do? Everyone shot their gazes at Xianxia in unison, and their gazes faintly carried a trace of anticipation, as if they were people that were about to drown to death and had grabbed onto a piece of life-saving straw. It wouldn't be late for me to leave after I cut off your head. Xianxia replied indifferently. Besides that, it's best you put your little tricks away. Don't make me look down on you. How could he be unable to discern that this priest Ziyun seemed to be intending to let him go but actually wanted to dissolve his will to fight? Once he chose to leave, his will to fight would surely cease to exist. In this way, his opponent would seize this opportunity, and the consequences were obvious. "Ha! What courage you have, little brother. If it was before, I might have aroused sympathy for your talents and taken you as my disciple. But unfortunately, you've killed those 3 fellow Taoists of mine, so I can only choose to kill you this time." Priest Ziyun grinned as he said with a kind expression, "But don't worry. I'll extract you soul and refine it into my magic treasure. Even though you'll suffer the pain of torment all day and night, it can be considered to be giving you an eternal fortune." The hearts of everyone went cold when they heard this. This priest Ziyun seemed kind and benevolent, and he spoke warmly and amiably as well. But the meaning within his words were truly vicious, ruthless, and caused everyone to feel a chill run down their spines. "Are you even worthy of speaking about fortune with me?" She suddenly started laughing before he stretched out his hand to flick the talisman armament. "OM!" A sword howl that shook the heavens resounded out, and it was like the roar of a dragon that surged through the heavens and the earth. Sword howls surged out like a tide that shook the 9 heavens. On the other hand, Priest Ziyun's expression had turned gloomy. "I'm unworthy of speaking about fortune with you? Very good. It's truly slightly a surprise to me that you possess such courage at such a young age." When he spoke up to hear, he looked down and swept his gaze past everyone in the estate and said, "Everyone, I advise all of you to be obedient and don't move, and perhaps you'll have a chance at survival. Otherwise, I can only send all of you on your way." Everyone shuddered with fear while they revealed struggling and indeterminate expressions, especially when Tianxua, Qingping, Huizhong, and Lu Qi. They were struggling intensely within their hearts. Truthfully speaking, if it was before Priest Ziyun and the others had arrived, they would absolutely not hesitate to make a move and help Xianxia annihilate Huaiming and Bei Huang. But now, they were hesitant. The reason was actually very simple, and it was because the strengths of Priest Ziyun, Qia, and Lord Huang Jiao was too terrifying and far from something they could resist. Now, it seemed to be impossible for Xianxia to be as bold and powerful as he was before while alone. After all, his opponents were 5 earthly immortal realm experts whose hands were covered in blood. Under these circumstances, how could Wen Tianxua and the others struggle? What should we do? Should we help or not? They were very aware that a single wrong decision might cause them to die a graveless death today, and it caused their expressions to become indeterminate. Even ants clung on to life, let alone existences like them that had lives for countless years. The older one got, the more one would treasure one's life, so they couldn't be blamed for being so troubled. "I forgot to tell you something. I left the sect to wander the world because I had to complete an assignment of my sect, and I must kill 10 great sinners. I just counted, and if I kill all of you I would still lack 2 more. It's truly a pity." Xianxi's green clothes fluttered within the wind while he seemed more and more fierce, and he was like an emperor of the sword as 2 cold bolts of lightning shot out from his eyes. An assignment of his sect. Everyone was shocked in their herd, and they finally dared confirm that this young man before them really possessed an extraordinary background, and he might be a mysterious existence from the unknown lands. After all, he'd killed 3 earthly immortal realm experts with ease just moments ago, and it seemed to be impossible for a single young man like this to appear in the 10 great immortal sections. Priest Ziyun smiled lightly. As an overlord amongst evil cultivators who'd slaughtered countless people, how could he be affected by a few words from Xianxia? So he said right away, "Since you're looking for death, then you can't blame me." Instantly, he flicked his violet-colored sleeve, causing 5 blood-colored tiny flags to fly out before swiftly enlarging. Instantly, they transformed into 30 kilometers tall blood-red flags that fluttered with the wind, and they were like a screen that covered the heavens and painted the heavens and the earth blood-red. "Kill! Kill!" These 5 blood-red flags seemed as if they were pulled up from an ocean of blood. Their surface was covered in fresh blood that seemed ready to drip out and had countless strange and ghastly restrictions drawn upon them. At the instant they appeared, they emanated waves of miserable and shrill cries that shook the heavens and the earth. Countless evil and vengeful spirits were visibly floating and sinking within the blood-red flags, and they were roaring with rage. causing everyone to have the misconception that they'd entered into a hell of evil spirits. Swish! 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 The 5 blood red flags that covered the sky transformed into 5 bloody glows that were inserted into the surroundings of Marquis Wen's estate according to the positioning of the 5 elements, and they cooperated with each other from a distance to completely seal up this expanse of space. It was utterly impossible to see anything that was occurring within the estate from the outside, whereas everyone within the estate was similarly incapable of establishing any connection with the outside world. Such an ability simply seemed like it had forcefully separated and sealed off this expanse of space, and it was practically godlike. Everyone wanted to take a step back as they were afraid of being swept into it. However, all of them noticed to their shock that the entire estate had actually been confined, while they weren't able to move at all, as if they'd fallen into a swamp. Shit! Why can't I move? Damn it! My body has been confined as well. I can't even circulate my true essence. Everyone was horrified, and then they looked at the 5 blood red flags that covered the sky because they understood that it was surely caused by this terrifying magic treasure that emanated a surging bloody glow. This set of magic treasures was too terrifying, and it was no wonder that Priest Ziyun was unafraid, because this was absolutely a great and astonishing weapon capable of confining space and locking down everyone. Everyone, there's no need for panic. So long as you stay there obediently, then I'll surely leave all of you a chance at survival. Priest Ziyun spoke slowly with an indifferent tone. This was a sort of deterrent force, and it was similarly a type of conceit as well, because a single set of magic treasures were capable of sealing off the heavens and the earth and causing all the cultivators within the magic treasure's scope of effect to suffer varying degrees of suppression. All of them were horrified, anxious, and uneasy. Some were even trembling and were terrified to the point of collapsing onto the ground. Even when Tianxua, Qingping, Huizhong, and the few other earthly immortal realm experts felt a wave of fear. Fortunately, I didn't charge out impatiently earlier. This Priest Ziyun is too terrifying. The resources and reserves of an old fellow that has lived for over 10,000 years is truly extraordinary. Regardless of if it was Bailey Yen or the 2 old servants behind her. All of their expressions were extremely heavy. They were similarly within the area that was enveloped, so they were naturally able to sense the terrifying might emanated by the 5 blood red flags. Fellow Taoists Huai Ming, Bei Huang, Chia, and Huang Jiao, each of you take charge of a prime blood god flag and completely seal off this place. Priest Ziyun instructed with an indifferent tone. Huai Ming and the others smiled cruelly before transforming into 4 bloody streaks of lights that went to carry out their orders. Prime blood god flags. Sure enough, it's this precious treasure of evil. Bailey Yen spoke while a wisp of shock suffused her face. What? Those are prime blood god flags? The flag said to have been possessed by Ancestor Blood River in the Netherworld during the primeval times? The flag that's capable of annihilating the 5 elements, dyeing the 3 dimensions with blood, and instantly transforming a myriad of living beings into vengeful spirits? Many people were shocked. The reputation of the prime blood god flag was too great. It had once revealed extraordinary splendor during the primeval times and created a reputation for itself through slaughter, and it had killed countless great figures that shook the heavens and the earth. Supposedly, this prime blood god flag was refined from the soul of a god within the longest river of blood in the Netherworld, and it formed a world of its own called the Blood River World within it. It was a great weapon of slaughter that had shocked the primeval times. There were many legends about this precious treasure of evil. All those years ago, Ancestor Blood River possessed it, and he almost conquered the 6 paths of reincarnation in the Netherworld and took control of the entire Netherworld. He was only a step away from becoming the ruler of a world. Later on, even though Ancestor Blood River was suppressed by the Netherworld Emperor, the various rumors related to this prime blood god flag had been spread out. The prime blood god flag has been suppressed within the Netherworld a long time ago, so how could it possibly emerge once more into the world? This is probably a copy, and it can only exert the might of an immortal artifact when there are 5 flags executed jointly. One of the old servants behind Bailey Yen spoke in a low voice. Everyone was shocked when they heard this. It's only a copy, yet it possesses such might. Then what if the real prime blood god flag emerges into the world? How formidable would it be? At this instant, even Xianxia was apprehensive in his heart. The 5 prime blood god flags suppressed the surroundings and ceaselessly emanated a fluctuation that caused him to feel heavy pressure, and it was like he'd fallen into a cage and couldn't struggle his way out. But right after that, his heart jerked abruptly as he sensed a strand of unusual fluctuation coming from within the Buddha's pagoda. In next to no time, his expression returned to normal, but the corners of his mouth flashed with a strange expression. Fellow Taoist Huaiming, you can make a move and kill this little kid now. It can be considered to be revenge for fellow Taoists Huai, Shuifeng, and Baikong. Priest Zi Yun instructed with a flat voice. He was very confident that no matter how heaven-defying Xianxia's combat strength was, Xianxia wouldn't be able to resist once the prime blood god flags were utilized. After all, he'd exhausted a few thousands of years to gather an innumerable amount of blood and souls to forge this precious treasure. Even though it was a copy, its might was even more formidable than an ordinary immortal artifact, and it was comparable with a dark spirit-grade immortal artifact. Priest Zi Yun had dealt with countless fatal disasters by relying on it, and it could be said that he was able to roam about freely until now, mostly because of the contribution of this precious treasure. Haha! Thank you, Big Brother Zi Yun, for helping me achieve my wish. Huaiming roared with laughter as he walked out with large strides, and his eyes emanated dense, killing intent. Little kid, let me fucking see how you'll complete that bullshit assignment of your sect once you're dead. Bang! In the next instant, Huaiming transformed into an expanse of bloody light that assaulted Xianxia, and he intended to seize and completely refine Xianxia's blood essence to be supplement for himself. Such a heaven-defying young man was absolutely someone favored by the heavens, and his entire body was a treasure and had converged a great deal of karmic luck. So swallowing him was absolutely a great tonic that was benefit to Huaiming's cultivation. Swoosh! Suddenly, a strand of jet-black light sprayed out abruptly from between the brows of Xianxia, who was confined to the point of being unable to struggle. The jet-black light contained a strand of an energy that was a taboo, and it was icy cold, mysterious, and filled with a terrifying aura that seemed capable of eradicating all techniques. As soon as it appeared, the surrounding space seemed as if it had suddenly been confined, and everything fell into a type of strange state of absolute motionlessness. Everyone noticed to their shock that the expanse of bloody light that Huaiming had transformed into was frozen by Xianxia, and it was in a sluggish state in midair as if it was a fish that had been suddenly frozen in the water. The light of eradication. Such a supreme divine ability that's ranked in the top 30 of the divine ability gold rankings of the 3 dimensions has actually been grasped by a little kid like you? Huaiming was shocked, and then he laughed savagely. Unfortunately, you haven't cultivated it to a high level, and your strength is too weak. Such a divine ability falling into your hands is simply a waste of God's gifts. So how could it injure me? Bang! As he spoke, his entire body shook and directly broke free of the light of eradication's restraint. And then he pounced once more towards Xianxia with a monstrous imposing aura, causing it to seem like a devilish cloud was pressing down towards Xianxia. Swoosh! However, Xianxia opened his mouth and spat out a strand of sword qi. The sword qi was dazzling and boundlessly resplendent. It deduced the profundities of boundless mysteries, and it created the changes of the past and present. This was the creation sword qi, and it was inherited from the exalted ant emperor of the primeval times. Pooh! The sword qi struck out and caused a muffled bang to resound out. Huaiming's chest was directly penetrated while the creation sword qi invaded his wound, causing blood to spray out while it actually became difficult to heal. He knew he'd been careless. This sword insight was too terrifying and had already attained the state of sword light dispersion. It minced his skin and flesh without end, and it terrified him to the point his entire body went cold, causing him to forcefully endure the intense pain while swiftly retreating. No one had expected that such an unexpected event would actually occur. Xianxia was suppressed by the fluctuations of the prime blood god flags, yet was still able to exert his might. Not only did he execute the light of eradication, he even spat out a terrifying strand of sword qi and injured a great sinner at the 3rd level of the earthly immortal realm. I'll kill him, A ghastly shout exploded out as Bei Huang charged over and attacked from behind Chen Shi. He'd learned a lesson from Huai Ming and didn't go close, and he withdrew a pitch-black chain that was coiled with the glow of blood before fiercely whipping it down from midair instead. It was like the chain of the god of devils was whipping down at the world. The devilish chain seemed like a whip that tore through the sky as it whipped down, and it carried a savage and unnatural roaring and rumbling, while it pressed down like a devilish mountain that lay across the sky that possessed an extremely terrifying, imposing aura. Everyone was terrified because the strike was too terrifying, and ordinary earthly immortal realm experts would be whipped by this strike to the point their flesh and skin split apart before they were obliterated. Bang! Chen Shi's back seemed as if it had eyes. The apertures on his entire body opened up like hedgehog that was revealing its spines, and his entire body erupted with numerous fierce sword chi that deduced creation and developed a myriad of profundities. It directly minced this whipping strike into pieces while numerous strands of sword chi amongst them shot at Bei Huang. Bei Huang's face went grim, and he didn't dare take it head-on, so he retreated hastily and avoided it. The consequences Huai Ming faced earlier were still vivid in his mind, so how could he possibly dare resist this terrifying sword chi head-on? Everyone present was shocked when they saw this. What a heaven-defying young man. He has fallen deeply into a hopeless situation yet is still capable of launching an overbearing counterattack. Exactly how formidable is his strength? Humph! What a desperate struggle. Let me see how long you can struggle for. Priest Ziyun's eyes were filled with a cold expression as he urged the prime blood god flags to transform into a bloody screen that covered the sky, and then they pressed down in unison from the positions of the five elements towards Chen Shi, who was in the center. This expanse of the heavens and the earth were completely blood-red. Chilly winds billowed, vengeful spirits wailed, boundless blood surged, and the glow of sin flowed about, causing it to seem to have transformed into a hell of blood. The world was confined, and the pressure emanated onto the world multiplied explosively. The others didn't feel anything, but this pressure affected Chen Shi like a large mountain pressing down onto an ant, and it was terrifying to the extreme, causing his blood, skin, and bones to seem to be on the verge of exploding apart. But Chen Shi's expression remained unchanged as the strange expression on his face grew deeper. Priest Ziyun smiled lightly and felt victory was within his grasp. He waved the snow-white horsetail brush in his hand, causing a blood-red thunderbolt to be struck out and tear through the sky as it struck at Chen Shi with the intention of crippling Chen Shi's body. Uncle Yong, can you break through these prime flame god flags? Otherwise, Chen Shi will be in danger. Bailey Yen spoke with a low voice while she revealed an expression of extreme anxiousness. It's difficult to achieve unless we utilize an immortal artifact like the Eternal Bell of Kings, because even though these prime flame god flags are copies, their combined might is no different from a dark spirit grade immortal artifact. But princess, we didn't bring along such a divine weapon when we come out this time. The nearby old servant shook his head. Little brother, you're still too young and haven't matured, yet you dared boast about enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens? Even I can't bear the sight of it. So I can only destroy your cultivation and give you a lesson that's impossible to forget for your entire life. Priest Ziyun grinned as he spoke with a kind and benevolent expression. Yet his movements weren't slow in the slightest, and he caused the blood-red thunderbolt to slash down while boundless lightning enveloped Chen Shi. Chen Shi's entire body rumbled. Old goat, do you think you're really all-powerful? Accompanying his voice was a lofty aura of light that surged out abruptly from his body, and unlike normal light, this light had a deep, solemn, and vast aura. In next to no time, numerous vortexes revolved and rumbled on the surface of his body. Everyone noticed to their shock that the blood, sin, and even vengeful spirits surging out from the prime blood god flags were devoured by the vortexes and before merging into Chen Shi's body. Numerous rocks seemed to be whistling about within those vortexes, and they charged into the 9 heavens and wandered the universe. Moreover, an ancient book that was glowing faintly appeared briefly even deeper within the vortex. This was the miraculous scene caused by the combination of the Netherworld Register and Stellar Lightning Form. The Netherworld Register was an extremely mysterious book that came from the Netherworld. It was inherited from the third Netherworld Emperor from the primordial era, and it was the supreme divine book of the Netherworld. At the same time, it was a precious treasure that surpassed the might of nature. A very long time ago, Yu had once said that the third Netherworld Emperor was absolutely a great figure that roamed freely through the ages and shocked the three dimensions. Moreover, he controlled the 6 paths of reincarnation and had once discussed the Tao for 10 years without losing against the master of the mansion, Fuxi. He had lofty aspirations and intended to bury the gods, annihilate the devils, and reconstruct the order of the laws in the 3 dimensions, so he could give the myriad of worlds a flourishing age of peace. But it was precisely because of this that he'd enraged the gods and devils of the 3 dimensions, causing him to be jointly annihilated by them, and he died with hatred in his heart. The Netherworld Register was just like the Condemn Evil Brush. Both of them were treasures utilized by the Netherworld Emperor when he roamed the world, and they were peerlessly sharp weapons to slaughter evil and devils. The Netherworld Register formed a world of its own within it. It formed the path illuminated by fire with permetha flowers, used the muddy sea of bitterness to link up the other side, whereas the other side were the 6 paths of reincarnation of the Netherworld. Moreover, the Netherworld Register and Condemn Evil Brush complemented each other. The Condemn Evil Brush managed life and death, whereas the Netherworld Register managed leading souls to the other side. Any dead soul that was killed by the Condemn Evil Brush would have its sins purified by the Netherworld Register before its crimes would be determined by the order in the Netherworld Register. After that, it would be lead to the 6 paths of reincarnation to be reborn. Earlier, when Xianxia suffered the suppression of the prime blood god flags, the Netherworld Register had suddenly emitted fluctuations that caused him to instantly realize that the Netherworld Register was an existence that innately countered this evil treasure. Thus, Xianxia took the opportunity to circulate the stellar lightning form and devoured the energy within the prime blood god flags. Sure enough, the pressure that surrounded his body started to reduce greatly. Moreover, he was able to notice clearly that expanse after expanse of gold light of virtue was surging into appearance within his black hole world, and it was like golden flowers were descending from the sky, causing his energy of virtue to increase swiftly while the cultivation of his Tao heart rose along with this. It was even to the extent that he was able to clear sense the existence of the mysterious energy from his Tao heart. This was absolutely an unexpected gain. The reason was very simple. The prime blood god flags had been refined by priest Ziyun for a few thousands of years, and the sin, vengeful spirits, and blood contained within it were practically monstrous and like an ocean. After it was absorbed by the Netherworld Register, the energy of sin was dissolved while the vengeful souls were led to reincarnation, causing this energy of virtue to naturally be given to Xianxia. I underestimated you, said Priest Ziyun. That blood-colored thunderbolt he struck out had been completely absorbed and merged into Xianxia's body, causing Xianxia's imposing aura to rise swiftly. Shit! Damn it! This little brat is actually devouring the energy of my prime blood god flags. After that, Priest Ziyun noticed something was off, and his expression instantly turned extremely gloomy while he was furious to the extreme. At this moment, even everyone within the estate was able to clearly sense that Xianxia's body was like a bottomless abyss that was madly absorbing the energy of the prime blood god flags, and it was exceedingly astounding. All of them didn't dare believe how this energy that was mixed with sin, vengeful spirits, evil spirits, and blood could possibly be absorbed. Not to mention having seen such a scene in their lives. They hadn't even imagined it. Uncle Yong, is that the profundity of reparation from the Diana Forest Temple? Bailey Yen was surprised and asked while staring blankly. It's probably not. The reparation Tao insight carries the sympathetic aura of putting down one's weapon to repent. And it's completely different from the imposing aura he's revealing at this moment. Seems like that's the aura of the Netherworld. But it's extremely obscure, and I can't be sure as well. The old servant frowned and shook his head as he spoke. Fellow Taoists, make a move together and kill this brat. Priest Ziyun's face was suffused with killing intent, and he didn't dare hesitate any longer and roared angrily. These prime blood god flags were his only reliance that he'd refined for a few thousands of years, and he'd refined it successfully with great difficulty. So if it was to be damaged, It would simply be like taking his life. After all, as a great sinner at the 4th level of the earthly immortal realm, the strength of the heavenly tribulation he faced was 10 times or 100 times more terrifying than an ordinary person. So if the prime blood god flags were to be damaged, how would he resist the next heavenly tribulation? As soon as he finished speaking, Priest Ziyun was the first to make a move. He urged the prime blood god flags to transform into 5 terrifying rivers of blood that crushed down on Xianxia. Bang! Xianxia's figure shook while he was almost unable to refrain from spitting a mouthful of blood, and he was extremely shocked in his heart. These prime blood god flags of his are really extraordinary. Once he executed it with his entire strength, even I will suffer a certain extent of harm. It was because the terrifying aura of suppression was too dense, and it was like a myriad of waves pressing down. Even if countless lightning vortexes were revolving madly outside his body, they would be unable to devour it completely. Even though it was a copy and not the true treasure that had been suppressed within the netherworld since a long time ago, it still possessed the might of a dark spirit grade magic treasure. With Xianxia's cultivation combined with the netherworld register and stellar lightning form, he was actually capable of resisting such might, and it was sufficient to prove how heaven-defying he was. At the same time, Huaiming, Bei Huang, Qia, and Huang Jiao made a move, and they withdrew numerous treasures that were filled with the glow of blood as they charged explosively at Xianxia. Everyone exclaimed with shock. If these 5 great sinners made a move with all their strengths while combined with the might of the prime blood god flags, they would simply possess the might to destroy the world. So how could Xianxia resist them? Kill! Priest Ziyun roared as he activated the prime blood god flags with all his might, and then it smashed down with a rumble. Its might seemed to have become even more terrifying, and he wanted to confine Xianxia completely before crushing Xianxia into pieces. Kill! Kill! Huaiming and the other earthly immortal realm experts roared furiously as well before sparing no effort to charge at Xianxia with the terrifying appearance of intending to instantly annihilate him. Right at this critical moment, Xianxia suddenly grunted coldly while his body that was originally unable to move surged abruptly with a wisp of extremely dazzling and blazing light that emitted the rumbling of the tune of the Tao and formed into a myriad of talisman markings that roiled about without end. When looked at from afar, his entire body seemed to have become the embodiment of the Tao of talismans. He was like an emperor of talismans that roamed the world while carrying a great imposing aura of supremacy. The energy of confinement and suppression that surged out from within the prime blood god flags actually didn't cause him to feel uncomfortable in the slightest. You've shouting about killing since the beginning, so it ought to be my turn to make a move now, right? A cold and indifferent grunt sounded out. Xianxia held the talisman armament and seemed like a god that had leaped out of the cage of the world and wasn't within the scope of the 5 elements. He swung the talisman armament, causing boundless fluctuations to erupt from it, and it forcefully blocked all the attacks against him. Shit! How could this kid be so heaven-defying? He's actually not affected by the confinement. Priest Ziyun was shocked. Never had he imagined that someone could break free from the divine might of his prime blood god flags, and it was simply unbelievable. Swoosh! Before his voice could finish resounding through the air, Xianxia slashed out a strand of sparkling creation sword chi with a raise of his hand, and it developed mysteries and deduced both past and present as it transformed into his strongest attack that slashed out. Pooh! The magic treasure in Huaiming's hands was slashed apart right away, whereas the sword chi didn't lose momentum in the slightest and enveloped Huaiming within it as well. A miserable shrill cry that shook the heavens and the earth resounded out while he was instantly minced to death. In merely a single strike, Huaiming, who was at the 3rd level of the earthly immortal realm, had been killed. Everyone was shocked because this sparkling sword chi seemed to be too formidable. Before this sword chi that practically possessed all-powerful might that was capable of cutting down a star, it seemed like even earthly immortal realm experts had become worthless. This scene caused a strand of icy coldness to emerge in the hearts of everyone, and they practically forgot to breathe.